They say every wolf knows their worth from the moment they first shift. That the moon goddess whispers your destiny into your soul when you're born. But what they don't tell you is this. Sometimes your destiny isn't the one they chose for you. Sometimes it's the one you have to steal back with bloodied hands and a shattered heart. My name is Celeste Thornfield, and I was supposed to be nothing. A shadow. A transaction. A pretty little omega wrapped in silk and sold to the highest bidder. They called it duty. They called it honor. They called it love. I called it a cage. This is the story of how I burned that cage to the ground. How I found a family in the ruins of society's rejects. How I fell in love with a wolf who saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. And how we stood before the most powerful alphas in existence and demanded they see us too. But before the victory, before the love, before the revolution, there was only darkness, fear, and a choice that would change everything. Run or submit. Live free or die trying. I chose to run, and the world would never be the same. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, this story is for you. Stay with me. Celeste's journey is just beginning, and I promise you, it's going to be worth every heartbeat.
Chapter 1.
Thornfield Estate didn't celebrate when I was born. There should have been howls of joy echoing through the Crimson Vale, our ancestral territory that stretched across the Western Highlands. There should have been a feast prepared by the finest cooks, wine flowing like rivers, pack members dancing under the full moon to honor the birth of an alpha's child. Instead, there was silence. The kind of silence that falls over a funeral. Heavy, suffocating, filled with disappointment so thick you could taste it on your tongue like ash. My mother, High Luna Margot Thornfield, labored for 16 hours in the family's grand manor. The midwives whispered prayers to the moon goddess, begging for a strong alpha pup, another golden child to add to the Thornfield legacy that stretched back 7 generations. My father, Alpha Victor Thornfield, paced outside the birthing chamber, his beta commanders flanking him, all of them waiting for the announcement that would shake the Western packs with envy. What they got was me. Small. Weak. Omega. I grew up in the shadow of my sister, Isadora. Where she was radiant, I was plain. Where she commanded attention the moment she entered a room, I learned to press myself against walls and disappear. Isadora's alpha aura manifested when she was barely 12 years old, so powerful that visiting wolves would instinctively bow their heads in her presence. She had our father's commanding presence and our mother's devastating beauty, cascading auburn hair, emerald eyes that could freeze you with a glance, and a smile that could make grown alphas stumble over their words. I had mousy brown hair that never cooperated, gray eyes that seemed perpetually sad, and a frame so slight that pack members forgot I existed. Straighten your spine, Celeste. Mother's voice would cut through pack dinners like a blade. Her perfectly manicured nails would dig into my shoulder hard enough to bruise. Must you slouch like a common servant? We have guests. Isadora would laugh, that crystalline sound that everyone found so charming. Mother, why bother? No one's looking at her anyway. Let her hunch. It suits her. The worst part? She was right. I was 17 now, and I'd perfected the art of invisibility. I wore colors that blended, grays, browns, muted greens. I kept my hair in a simple braid, never styled like Isadora's elaborate updos. I'd learned to mask my omega scent, soft jasmine and morning dew, with scent blockers, because an omega's natural scent attracted the wrong kind of attention from alphas who saw us as conquests rather than people. You're fortunate you're even allowed at these gatherings, Isadora told me once, applying crimson lipstick in the mirror we supposedly shared, though she'd claimed it years ago, and I was only permitted to use it when she wasn't around. Father wanted to send you to the Omega quarters with the others. I convinced him to let you stay in the family wing. You should be thanking me daily. I never thanked her, because I knew the truth. Isadora kept me close not out of sisterly love, but because she needed a comparison. Next to me, she shone like the sun. Next to me, every alpha in the territory looked at her like she was a goddess descended from the moon itself. The Thornfield territory was vast, Thousands of acres of pine forests, crystal lakes, and mountain peaks that touched the clouds. Our family manor stood at the highest point, a massive structure of dark wood and gray stone that had housed 7 generations of Thornfield alphas. The pack quarters spread below it, homes for our warriors, our craftsmen, our healers, and tucked away in the eastern corner, almost hidden from view, the Omega quarters. I'd never been inside the Omega quarters, but I'd seen them from a distance. Small cottages, practical but plain, where unmated Omegas lived under the watchful eye of pack supervisors. They weren't prisoners, exactly, but they weren't free either. They learned domestic skills, child-rearing, and how to please an alpha mate. How to be useful. That was the word I heard most often growing up. Useful. Omegas needed to be useful. We needed to justify our existence through service, bearing strong pups, maintaining peaceful homes, creating alliances through strategic matings. Without usefulness, we were burdens, defects, mistakes of biology that the pack tolerated out of necessity, but never celebrated. My bedroom was the smallest in the family wing, barely larger than a storage closet, tucked at the end of a long hallway near the servant stairs. It had one narrow window that looked out over the eastern forest, a bed barely wide enough for my slight frame, a small desk, and a trunk for my belongings. Isadora's suite was 4 times the size, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a massive bed draped in silk, and a private bathing chamber with a copper tub. She had walk-in closets for her extensive wardrobe, a sitting area for entertaining guests, and walls decorated with paintings and tapestries that cost more than most pack members earned in a year. You don't need much space. Mother had told me when I was 10, watching as servants moved my things from a larger room to this closet. It's temporary, anyway. Once you're of age, you'll be placed with an appropriate alpha, and this room will be repurposed for something useful. Perhaps a private library for your father. Placed. Not mated. Not married. Placed. I like furniture. Like a tool that needed to find its proper function. I experienced my first heat 6 months ago, 3 days after my 17th birthday. It came without warning, a fever that started in my core and spread through every nerve ending, turning my body into a furnace of desperate, aching need. The pain was unbearable, like something trying to claw its way out of my skin from the inside. I locked myself in my tiny room, biting down on my pillow to muffle the whimpers, my wolf clawing at my consciousness, begging for relief that wouldn't come. 3 days of agony. 3 days where every breath felt like fire, where my body betrayed me with cravings I didn't understand and couldn't control. No one checked on me. Not Mother. Not Isadora. Not even the Omega supervisors who were supposed to help young Omegas through their first heat with herbal remedies and guidance. When it finally ended, when I emerged from my room pale and trembling, barely able to stand, my father summoned me to his study. Alpha Victor Thornfield was a mountain of a man, 6'7", shoulders broad as a barn door, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes the color of steel. His presence filled any room he entered, his alpha aura so powerful it made lesser wolves physically uncomfortable. When he looked at you, really looked at you, it felt like being pinned beneath a boulder. He didn't look up from his paperwork when I entered. "You're of age now," he said, his voice flat and businesslike. "I've received 4 offers for your hand. 2 from neighboring packs, 1 from the Northridge pack in the mountains, and 1 from Alpha Cassius of the Shadowmere pack down south." My heart sank into my stomach. "Father, You don't speak unless I ask you a question." His eyes finally lifted to meet mine, and the disgust there was a physical blow. "I'll be reviewing these offers over the next 2 months. Whichever alliance benefits the Thornfield pack most, that's where you'll go." "Understood." I nodded, my throat too tight to form words. "Alpha Cassius's son is the most lucrative option," he continued, flipping through papers covered in formal pack script. "The boy is damaged. A training accident left him scarred, partially lame. No respectable Omega wants him. But his father is desperate for an heir and willing to pay handsomely for a broodmare who won't complain about her mate's deficiencies." Broodmare. He called me a broodmare. "You're dismissed," Father said, already returning his attention to his papers. Don't embarrass this family further by causing trouble. Accept your fate with dignity, or I'll have you sent to the Omega quarters immediately and your privileges revoked. I left his study on shaking legs, my mind reeling. 2 months. I had 2 months before I'd be shipped off to Shadowmere Pact to meet a stranger, someone even other Omegas rejected. The thought made me want to vomit. That was 8 weeks ago. Tonight was the Autumn Gathering, the biggest event of the season. All the packs in the western region gathered at Thornfield Manor to celebrate the harvest, strengthen alliances, and, most importantly, allow unmated wolves to mingle and potentially find their goddess-blessed mates. It was also, I realized with creeping dread, the perfect opportunity for Father to announce my placement. I stood in my closet-sized room, staring at the plain servant's dress laid out on my bed. While Isadora would wear a gown of deep sapphire that cost a small fortune, I'd been given this rough brown fabric, shapeless and practical, designed to help me blend into the background while I served drinks to visiting dignitaries. At least try not to spill anything tonight, Isadora had told me earlier, sweeping past my room in her elaborate gown, her hair styled in an intricate updo woven with golden thread. Father's in negotiations with Alpha Lucian Nightshade. One wrong move from you could ruin months of diplomatic work. Lucian Nightshade. The name sent whispers through every pack in the Western Territories. He was young for an alpha, only 26, but commanded the most powerful pack in the region. The Nightshade pack controlled the Northern Territories, vast stretches of wilderness rich with game and resources. They were warriors, strategists, and under Lucian's leadership, they'd become virtually untouchable. Rumor said Lucian Nightshade was devastatingly handsome but cold as winter ice. That his eyes were the color of midnight, so dark they were almost black, and could pin you in place with a single glance. That he'd never taken a mate, never shown interest in any Omega despite dozens throwing themselves at his feet. Isadora wanted him. Everyone knew it. She'd been angling for months to catch his attention, attending every gathering where he might appear, writing letters to his pack under the guise of diplomatic correspondence. She wanted to be Luna of the Nightshade pack, wanted the power and prestige that came with being his mate. And tonight, with him visiting our territory, she'd pull out every weapon in her arsenal to claim him. I pulled on the servant's dress, braided my hair, and applied scent blockers. Then I made my way down to the Great Hall, preparing for another night of being invisible. The Great Hall was magnificent. Massive timber beams soared overhead, and walls were decorated with ancestral banners and weapons from generations of Thornfield warriors. Long tables groaned under the weight of roasted meats, fresh bread, autumn vegetables, and barrels of wine and mead. Hundreds of wolves from across the Western Territories filled the space, alphas in their finest clothing, betas managing the logistics, and omegas dressed to attract potential mates. I picked up a serving tray and began moving through the crowd, refilling glasses and clearing plates. Invisible. Forgettable. Exactly as I'd been trained. More wine, an alpha from the Riverside pack demanded, shoving his empty glass at me without even glancing in my direction. Yes, sir, I murmured, refilling it. Near the high table where my father entertained visiting alphas, I saw her. Isadora, radiant in her sapphire gown, holding court among a circle of admirers. And beside her, standing with the kind of presence that made everyone else seem diminished, was Lucian Nightshade. He was taller than I'd imagined, easily 6'5", with a lean, powerful build that spoke of both strength and speed. His hair was black as a raven's wing, slightly longer than fashionable, touching his shoulders. His features were sharp and aristocratic, all clean lines and angles that could have been carved from marble. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Midnight black, deep enough to drown in, and currently focused on Isadora with an expression I couldn't quite read. Interest? Calculation? I couldn't tell. Isadora laughed at something he said, the sound like wind chimes, and placed her hand on his forearm. A possessive gesture. A claiming gesture. Every wolf watching understood the implication. She was marking her territory. I turned away, a strange ache in my chest that I didn't understand. Why should I care who Isadora pursued? Let her have the powerful alpha. Let her have everything she wants. I just wanted to be free. I was near the kitchen entrance, my tray loaded with empty glasses, when it happened. Someone stepped backward without looking. I tried to dodge, but the space was too crowded. The impact sent my tray flying. Glasses shattered across the floor. Wine splashed like blood across expensive fabric. Across Isadora's sapphire gown. The hall fell silent. Every conversation died. Every eye turned to stare at the catastrophe unfolding. Time seemed to slow as I watched the wine spread across my sister's dress, ruining the expensive fabric, destroying her perfect appearance in front of the most important alpha in the Western Territories. Isadora's face contorted with rage. You clumsy worthless. Her hand cracked across my face like a whip. The slap echoed through the silent hall. My head snapped to the side, pain exploding across my cheek, stars bursting behind my eyes. Isadora. Mother appeared, but she wasn't rushing to my defense. She was looking at the gathered crowd, at the visiting dignitaries witnessing this humiliation, calculating damage control. Not here. Not in front of guests. She ruined my dress. Isadora shrieked, her carefully cultivated elegance shattering. In front of Alpha Nightshade. This worthless Omega has sabotaged me for the last time. Two servants grabbed my arms, hauling me toward the side exit. Through my blurring vision, I caught one final glimpse of the hall. Isadora was being comforted by concerned alphas, Mother apologizing profusely to Lucian Nightshade. And Father was looking at me with such pure, undisguised disgust that I felt it like a physical blow. I'd crossed a line I could never come back from. They threw me into my room and locked the door from the outside. I hit the floor hard, my palms scraping against rough wood, my cheeks still throbbing from Isadora's slap. And in the darkness of my tiny prison, I realized something with crystalline clarity. My father will make his decision tonight. After this public embarrassment, after humiliating the family in front of the most powerful alpha in the territories, there would be no more delays. By morning, I'd be on my way to Shadowmere Pack, sold to a stranger, locked into a life of servitude and pain. Unless I ran. Chapter 2. The lock clicked shut, sealing me in my prison. I sat on the cold floor for a long moment, my cheeks still burning from Isadora's slap, my hands trembling with adrenaline and fear. Below, the sounds of the autumn gathering continued. Music, laughter, the clinking of glasses. Life goes on, as if I didn't exist. As if I'd never existed at all. My wolf stirred restlessly inside me, pacing like a caged animal. She'd been quiet for so long, suppressed by scent blockers and my own desperate need to remain invisible. But now she was awake, alert, and she was afraid. Trapped, she whispered in the back of my mind. Trapped. I need to run. I need to get out. I pushed myself up slowly, my body aching. My servant's dress was stained with wine, and I could already feel bruises forming where the servants had grabbed my arms. I moved to my small window and looked out at the night. The moon was 3/4 full, bright enough to illuminate the forest beyond the estate grounds. The eastern wood stretched for miles, wild and untamed, leading eventually to the unclaimed territories, the borderlands where no pack held dominion, where rogues and outcasts disappeared into the wilderness, where wolves went to die, but also where wolves went to be free. The thought came suddenly, dangerously. What if I ran? My father would come for me. I knew that with certainty. After tonight's humiliation, he'd make his decision quickly. By morning, maybe even within hours, he'd announce my placement to Shadowmere Pack. Alpha Cassius's damaged son would become my mate, and I'd spend the rest of my life producing heirs for a pack that saw me as nothing more than a vessel. Unless I left. Unless I ran into the darkness and never looked back. The idea was insane. Suicidal, even. Unmated Omegas didn't survive alone in the wilderness. We were too vulnerable, too weak, too dependent on pack structure for protection. Without a pack, I'd be fair game for rogues, wild animals, or worse, alphas who viewed lone Omegas as unclaimed property. But staying meant a living death. A gilded cage that would slowly suffocate every dream, every hope, every piece of myself that still believed I deserved more than this. Run, my wolf urged. Run now. Run fast. Run free. I made my decision in a heartbeat. Moving quickly and quietly, I pulled my small travel pack from under my bed, a canvas bag I'd kept hidden for years, not quite knowing why. Maybe some part of me had always known this moment would come. I stuffed it with practical clothes, a water canteen, a fire-starting kit, a hunting knife my grandmother had given me before she died, the only Thornfield who'd ever treated me with kindness, and what little food I could scavenge from my room, dried meat, hard bread, a small pouch of nuts. Not much, but it would have to be enough. My window was small, but I was smaller. I'd always hated being slight and fragile, but tonight it might save my life. I cracked the window open slowly, wincing at every tiny creak of wood and metal. Cold autumn air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and approaching winter. 3 stories up. Too high to jump safely, even for a werewolf. But there was a drain pipe running down the side of the building just a few feet to my left. If I could reach it, I climbed onto the narrow windowsill, my bag slung across my back, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Below, the ground seemed impossibly far away. One slip, one moment of lost balance, and I'd fall to my death. Don't look down, I told myself. Just don't look down. I stretched my arm toward the drain pipe, my fingers grasping for the cold metal. Almost there. Almost. My foot slipped on the windowsill. For one terrifying moment, I hung suspended in empty air, my fingers barely catching the pipe, my legs scrambling desperately for purchase against the rough stone wall. The metal groaned under my weight, ancient and corroded, threatening to pull free from its moorings. Hold on. Just hold on. I managed to get both hands around the pipe, then slowly, carefully began lowering myself down. The metal was freezing against my palms, and I could feel it shifting with each movement, bolts straining against stone. My arms burned with effort, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Halfway down, my grip slipped. I fell from the last story, hitting the ground hard enough to knock the air from my lungs. Pain exploded through my ankle, my shoulder, my ribs. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only lie there gasping like a fish pulled from water. Get up, my wolf commanded. Get up now. They'll find you. I forced myself to stand, testing my ankle. It hurt, badly, but it wasn't broken. I could still run. I had to run. The manor loomed behind me, windows glowing with warm light, music and laughter still drifting from the great hall. My family was there, celebrating, networking, and building alliances. They had no idea I was gone. Probably wouldn't notice for hours. I turned toward the eastern forest and ran. The trees swallowed me within minutes, their branches closing overhead like protective arms. My feet found paths I'd walked 1,000 times during my lonely childhood, secret trails where I'd escaped to be alone, to cry where no one would see, to dream of a different life. Now those dreams were pushing me forward, driving me deeper into the wilderness. I ran until my lungs burned, and my legs screamed for mercy. Ran until the sounds of the manor faded completely, replaced by the whisper of wind through pine needles and the distant call of night birds. Ran until I couldn't run anymore. When I finally collapsed against a massive oak tree, gasping for air, I had no idea how far I'd come. Miles, certainly. Maybe enough to reach the pack borders. Maybe enough to escape the regular patrols. But not nearly enough to be safe. I knew the Thornfield territory better than most. My father's pack controlled thousands of acres, with patrol wolves running the perimeter every night to watch for rogues and trespassers. The eastern border was the least guarded. Most threats came from the north and west, where rival packs pushed against our boundaries. But least guarded didn't mean unguarded. If I kept heading east, I'd eventually reach the unclaimed territories. The wild lands where pack law didn't reach, where wolves lived and died by their own strength. It was dangerous, lawless, filled with rogues who'd been exiled from their packs for crimes too terrible to forgive. but it was also freedom. I forced myself back to my feet and kept moving, slower now, trying to conserve energy. My ankle throbbed with each step. My shoulder ached where I'd hit the ground, but I pushed through the pain. Pain meant I was alive. Pain meant I was free. The forest grew darker and wilder as I traveled. The well-maintained trails gave way to rough wilderness, thick underbrush catching at my clothes, exposed roots threatening to trip me with every step. The moon filtered through the canopy in patches, creating pools of silver light surrounded by absolute darkness. I should have been terrified. A lone Omega in the wilderness at night, with no pack protection and barely any survival skills. Every shadow could hide a predator. Every sound could be a rogue stalking prey. But instead, I felt alive. For the first time in 17 years, I was making my own choices. Going where I wanted. Doing what I wanted. No one told me I was worthless, defective, a burden. No one would hit me or lock me away or sell me like livestock. The moon broke through the clouds fully, bathing the forest in ethereal light, and I laughed, a slightly hysterical sound that echoed through the trees. I was free. Even if that freedom killed me, even if I died alone in these woods, I was free. Hours passed. The night grew colder, my breath misting in the air. I found a small stream and refilled my water canteen, my hands shaking from cold and exhaustion. My stomach growled, but I didn't dare stop to eat. Not yet. Not until I was certain I'd crossed the border into unclaimed territory. That's when I heard them. Footsteps. Paw steps, actually. Multiple sets, moving through the underbrush with predatory grace. The distinctive sound of wolves on the hunt. My blood turned to ice. The patrol. Father's wolves had found my trail. I started running again, ignoring my screaming muscles and throbbing ankle. Behind me, I heard a howl, the signal that prey had been spotted. Other howls answered, a chorus of hunters closing in. They were hurting me, I realized with growing horror. Driving me toward something. Probably a clearing where they could surround me, cut off all escape routes. My wolf surged forward, begging to be released. Shift, she urged. Let me run. I'm faster. But I'd never shifted before. Never learned how. Omega wolves in the Thornfield pack weren't taught to shift. We were kept weak, dependent, controllable. My wolf was small and untrained, and against patrol wolves bred for speed and strength, she'd be helpless. I burst through a line of trees into a clearing, and my heart stopped. I'd reached the border. I could feel it, the strange tingle in the air that marked where pack territory ended and unclaimed land began. Across the clearing, maybe 50 yards away, was freedom. But between me and freedom stood 5 massive wolves. They'd been waiting, anticipating exactly where I'd run. Now they formed a semicircle, blocking my escape, their eyes glowing in the moonlight. Behind me, more patrol wolves emerged from the forest, cutting off retreat. I was trapped. The largest wolf, a dark gray male I recognized as my father's head of security, shifted to human form. Marcus Ironwood stood before me, naked and unbothered, his muscular frame radiating alpha dominance. Omega Celeste, he said, his voice flat and professional. By order of Alpha Victor Thornfield, you are to return to the manor immediately. Resisting will result in disciplinary action. My hands clenched into fists. I'm not going back. You don't have a choice. Marcus took a step forward. You belong to the Thornfield pack. Your alpha has given you an order. You will comply. I don't belong to anyone. The words burst from me with more force than I'd ever used in my life. I'm not property. I'm not a bargaining chip. I'm a person, and I refuse to be sold off like livestock. Marcus's expression didn't change. Your father anticipated this response. I'm authorized to use force if necessary. The wolves around me tensed, preparing to spring. This was it. The end of my brief taste of freedom. They dragged me back to the manor, lock me up, probably beat me for the trouble I'd caused. And tomorrow I'd be shipped off to Shadowmere Pack, my fate sealed. Unless. I looked at the border. So close and yet impossibly far. If I could just reach it, If I could cross into unclaimed territory, pack law said they couldn't follow. Technically, I'd be beyond their jurisdiction. But I'd never make it. Not with wolves surrounding me, ready to pounce the moment I moved. I was going to have to shift. Let my wolf run, and pray she was fast enough. Finally, my wolf said, surging forward with desperate eagerness. Let me out. Let me protect us. I closed my eyes and reached for that primal part of myself I'd always kept locked away. The change began, bones starting to crack and reshape, skin rippling as fur tried to push through. It hurt. Moon Goddess, it hurt more than anything I'd ever felt. Like every cell in my body was being torn apart and rebuilt. I'd never shifted before, never practiced, and my wolf was fighting against years of suppression and scent blockers that had kept her weak. Stop her, Marcus shouted. The wolves lunged. I felt the shift complete just as they reached me, bones snapping into new configurations, my perspective dropping as I went from 2 legs to 4. My wolf form was small, barely reaching the shoulders of the patrol wolves, with fur the color of storm clouds and eyes that reflected silver moonlight. But I was fast. I darted between 2 attacking wolves, their jaws snapping on empty air where I'd been a heartbeat before. My smaller size let me slip through gaps they couldn't follow, my desperation giving me speed I didn't know I possessed. The border was right there. 10 yards. 5 yards. A massive paw caught my hind leg, claws tearing through fur and flesh. I yelped in pain but kept moving, scrambling forward on 3 legs, blood trailing behind me. 3 yards.
2.
I felt Marcus's jaws close on my tail, felt him pulling me back. And then I was across. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming. The pack bond that had always been there, faint and disapproving but present, suddenly snapped. It felt like something being ripped from my chest, a tether severed, leaving me floating and untethered. I was beyond the border, in unclaimed territory.
Free.
The patrol wolves skidded to a halt at the border, unable to follow. Pack law was absolute. Cross into unclaimed territory without alpha permission, and you were considered rogue yourself. They couldn't risk it. Marcus shifted back to human form, his face twisted with frustration. You've made a grave mistake, Omega. These woods will kill you. If you're lucky, it'll be quick. I wanted to respond, wanted to tell him I'd rather die free than live in chains. But I was in wolf form, and the words wouldn't come. Instead, I turned and limped deeper into the wilderness, leaving the patrol wolves and everything I'd ever known behind. I'd made it. Against all odds, I'd escaped. Now I just had to survive. Chapter 3.
Pain.
That was the first thing I became aware of as I stumbled through the dark forest. My hind leg screamed with every step, blood matting my fur where Marcus's claws had torn through flesh and muscle. My lungs burned from running, my paws were cut and bleeding from sharp rocks and thorns, and my entire body trembled with exhaustion. But I was free. I kept repeating that to myself like a mantra as I pushed deeper into the unclaimed territories.
Free.
You're free. Whatever happens next, you chose it. The forest here was different from my father's carefully maintained lands. Wilder. Older. The trees grew so thick their branches wove together overhead, blocking out most of the moonlight. The underbrush was dense and tangled, making every step a battle. Strange sounds echoed through the darkness. Animal calls I didn't recognize, the rustle of things moving just beyond my vision, the distant howl of wolves that made my injured leg want to give out entirely. Rogue wolves. Had to be. The unclaimed territories were filled with them. Wolves who'd been exiled from their packs for crimes ranging from murder to simple disobedience. Wolves who'd rejected pack life entirely and chose to live wild. Wolves who followed no law but their own strength. Wolves who would see a small, injured Omega as easy prey. My wolf whimpered inside my mind, fear finally overtaking the adrenaline that had gotten us this far. Need to hide. I need to rest. Bleeding too much. She was right. I could feel my strength fading with every step, could smell my own blood in the night air, a beacon for any predator within miles. If I didn't find shelter soon, I'd collapse. And if I collapsed out here in the open, I'd never wake up. Through the trees ahead, I spotted an outcropping of rocks, a small cliff face with what looked like a shallow cave at its base. Not much, but better than nothing. I limped toward it, my vision starting to blur at the edges. The cave was barely deep enough to be called a cave, more like a hollow carved into the rock by centuries of wind and rain. But it was dry and offered some protection from the elements. I crawled inside, my injured leg finally giving out completely, and shifted back to human form. The change was agony. Bones cracking and reforming, fur receding into skin, my perspective shifting as I went from 4 legs to 2. I'd heard that shifting became easier with practice, that experienced wolves could do it in seconds without pain. But I was a novice, and my body protested every transformation like it was being torn apart. When it was finally over, I lay naked and shivering on the cold stone floor, my leg a mass of torn flesh and blood. In human form, the wounds looked even worse, for deep gashes from Marcus's claws, still bleeding sluggishly. I needed to stop the bleeding. I needed to clean the wounds before infection set in. Needed. My vision swam. Darkness crept in at the edges. No, I told myself firmly. You didn't come this far just to die in a cave. Move.
Do something.
I forced myself to sit up, fighting waves of dizziness. My pack was still strapped to my back somehow. The canvas had survived both shifts. With shaking hands, I pulled it off and rummaged inside for my water canteen and the small medical kit I'd packed. The kit was basic: bandages, needle, and thread, a few herbal remedies my grandmother had taught me about before she died. Not enough for wounds this serious, but better than nothing. I poured water over the gashes, hissing at the pain. The water ran red, washing away blood and dirt. Using the last of my strength, I managed to thread the needle and stitch the worst of the tears closed. My stitches were clumsy and uneven, nothing like the neat work a trained healer could do, but they'd hold.
Probably.
I wrapped the wounds in clean bandages, then pulled on the spare clothes from my pack. The simple movement exhausted me completely. I needed food. Needed to build a fire for warmth. I needed to figure out what to do next. But my body had other plans. The moment I lay back against the cold stone, unconsciousness pulled me under like a dark tide. I don't know how long I slept.
Hours, maybe.
When I finally woke, it was to the sound of breathing that wasn't my own. My eyes snapped open. The cave entrance was blocked. Not by a rock or debris, but by a massive wolf. My heart stopped. The creature was enormous, easily the size of a small horse, with fur so black it seemed to absorb the weak morning light filtering into the cave. But it was the eyes that held me frozen. Golden eyes. Bright, intelligent, and currently studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. This wasn't a rogue. Rogues were wild, mindless, driven by base instincts and violence. This wolf was something else entirely. The way it held itself, the calculating look in those golden eyes, this was a thinking creature. A werewolf in control of their shift. And it was between me and escape. Don't run, my wolf whispered urgently. If we run, it'll chase. Prey runs. We're not prey. She was right, but every instinct I had screamed at me to bolt, to shift and try to fight my way past this monster, even though I knew I'd lose. The black wolf tilted its head, studying me like I was a puzzle it was trying to solve. Then, incredibly, it sat down. Not in an aggressive crouch, but in a relaxed sitting position, its tail curling around its paws. Waiting. For what? We stared at each other as the sun slowly rose, painting the forest in shades of gold and amber. The wolf didn't move. Didn't attack. Just watched me with those unsettling golden eyes. Finally, when I couldn't stand the tension anymore, I spoke. Are you going to kill me? The wolf's ears pricked forward at the sound of my voice. Then, impossibly, it shook its head. I blinked. You understand me? A nod. My mind reeled. Werewolves in shifted form could understand human speech, but most couldn't respond beyond basic gestures. The wolf brain was too different, too primal. Only the most experienced shifters could maintain that level of control. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The wolf stood and backed away from the cave entrance, giving me space. Then it looked over its shoulder at me expectantly. "Come with me," the gesture clearly said. Every survival instinct I possessed screamed that this was a terrible idea. Following a massive predator deeper into the wilderness, injured and alone? That was how horror stories began. But what choice did I have? Stay in this cave and hope the wolf lost interest? Hope my wounds didn't get infected? Hope another predator didn't find me first? At least if I followed, I was making a choice. Taking action instead of waiting to die. I struggled to my feet, my injured leg protesting immediately. The wolf watched patiently as I grabbed my pack and limped out of the cave into the morning light. The forest looked different in daylight. Still wild and untamed, but less threatening somehow. Birdsong filled the air, and sunlight filtered through the canopy in golden beams. Beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. The black wolf started walking, moving at a pace I could follow despite my limp. Every few yards, it would glance back to make sure I was still behind it, those golden eyes assessing my condition. We walked for what felt like hours. My leg throbbed with every step, fresh blood seeping through the bandages. Twice I had to stop and rest, leaning against trees while I caught my breath. Each time, the wolf waited patiently, never pushing me beyond what I could handle. Where was it taking me? Deeper into rogue territory?
To its pack.
To some den where I'd become a meal? "Trust," my wolf said softly. "This one something's different."
Can't explain.
But not the enemy. Not a threat. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust the instinct that said this massive predator meant no harm to me. But trust had been beaten out of me over 17 years of disappointment and betrayal. We climbed higher into the mountains, following paths that barely existed. The air grew thinner, colder. My breath misted in front of my face, and I pulled my jacket tighter around myself. Then we crested a ridge, and I stopped dead. Below us lay a valley I'd never seen before. Hidden between two mountain peaks, accessible only through the narrow path we'd just traversed. And it was breathtaking. A river cut through the center, fed by waterfalls that cascaded down rocky cliffs. Pine trees grew thick and tall, their branches creating a canopy that filtered sunlight into beams of gold. There were caves dotted along the valley walls, their entrances framed by ancient stones that looked deliberately placed. And in the center of it all, built into the hillside itself, was a den. A massive structure of wood and stone that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. But it was what, or rather, who stood outside the den that made my heart stop. Wolves.
Dozens of them.
Emerging from the forest, from the caves, from the den itself. All of them massive, all of them moving with the controlled grace of experienced shifters. And all of them watching me with curious, calculating eyes. This is a pack, I realized with dawning horror. The black wolf brought me to its pack. I'd escaped one pack only to be delivered to another. And from the looks of these wolves, scarred, battle-hardened, wild, this wasn't a civilized pack like the Thornfields. These were rogues, outcasts. The wolf pack alphas warned their children about in cautionary tales. The black wolf that had guided me here moved forward, and the other wolves parted like water around it. Clearly, this was their alpha, their leader. It stopped in the center of the clearing and began to shift. I watched, transfixed and terrified, as the massive wolf transformed. Bones cracked and reformed. Fur receded into bronze skin. The creature contracted, shifted, and became human. Became a man. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with a powerful, lean build that spoke of both strength and speed. His hair was black as a raven's wing, falling past his shoulders in thick waves. His face was all sharp angles and strong lines, marked with scars that told stories of battles survived. But it was his eyes that held me captive. Those same golden eyes, now in a devastatingly handsome human face. He stood before me completely naked, utterly unself-conscious, radiating an alpha presence that made my knees want to buckle. But there was no aggression in his stance. No threat. Just patient curiosity. Welcome, he said, his voice deep and rough like distant thunder. I am Declan Ashford, Alpha of the Wild Ones. And you're bleeding on my territory. I opened my mouth to respond, but my leg finally gave out completely. The world tilted sideways, darkness rushing in, and the last thing I felt was strong arms catching me before I hit the ground. Chapter 4. I woke to warmth. After days of cold stone and forest floors, after running until my body broke, after pain and fear and darkness, warmth was the first thing my consciousness registered. Soft furs beneath me, a fire crackling somewhere nearby, the scent of herbs, and something cooking that made my empty stomach clench with desperate hunger. For a blissful moment, I thought I'd dreamed it all. The escape, the patrol wolves, the journey through the wilderness. Maybe I was still in my tiny room at Thornfield Manor, and none of it had been real. Then I tried to move, and pain lanced through my leg like lightning. Very real. Definitely not a dream. My eyes snapped open. I was in a small chamber carved into rock, its walls smooth and warm from the fire burning in a stone hearth. Furs covered the floor, and the sleeping pallet where I lay. Torches flickered in wall brackets, casting dancing shadows. Through an open doorway covered by a leather curtain, I could hear voices, low conversation, occasional laughter, the sounds of people living their lives. How long had I been unconscious? I tried to sit up, and a wave of dizziness forced me back down. My leg was freshly bandaged, clean white cloth wrapped neatly around my thigh, nothing like my clumsy field dressing. Someone had tended my wounds. Someone had brought me here, laid me on these furs, kept me warm. The leather curtain moved, and a woman entered. She was striking, lean and athletic with short silver hair that framed sharp features and amber eyes that seemed to see right through me. She wore fitted leather pants and a simple tunic, moving with the dangerous grace of a trained fighter. When she smiled, it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're awake," she said, her voice dry, but not unkind. "Good. Declan was starting to worry you'd sleep through winter."
Declan.
The Alpha. The massive black wolf who'd found me in the cave and brought me here. Where am I? My voice came out as a croak, my throat dry as desert sand. Safe. The woman crossed to a small table and poured water from a clay pitcher into a wooden cup. You're in the Wild Ones territory. Hidden valley, unclaimed land, about 30 miles east of wherever you ran from. She handed me the cup. Drink slowly. You've been out for 2 days. 2 days? I sipped the water carefully, though every instinct screamed at me to gulp it down. My leg was infected by the time you collapsed. Marcus is good with his claws, I'll give him that. She settled onto a low stool near my pallet, studying me with those unsettling amber eyes. One of our healers cleaned the wounds, applied poultices, and stitched you up properly. You'll have scars, but you'll walk again. Probably even run if you're lucky. Marcus. She knew Marcus Ironwood by name, which meant she knew where I'd come from, what I'd run from. Who are you? I asked. Natasha Frost. I'm Declan's second-in-command. She tilted her head. And you're Celeste Thornfield, Omega daughter of Alpha Victor Thornfield, who apparently decided she'd rather risk death in the wilderness than accept her fate. Her smile sharpened. I like you already. I set down the cup with shaking hands. You know who I am. We make it our business to know what happens in the packed territories, especially when it involves runaways. Natasha leaned back, her posture relaxed but her eyes alert. Word travels fast in the wilderness. Your father's patrol wolves were very vocal about the defective Omega who crossed the border. They spent hours at the boundary line, threatening terrible things if you didn't return. My heart sank. They're still looking for me? They were. For about 3 days. Then they gave up and went home. Natasha's expression was difficult to read. Seems your father declared you dead to the pack. Told everyone you'd been killed by rogues. Even held a memorial service. The words hit me like a physical blow.
Dead.
He'd declared me dead rather than admit his daughter had successfully escaped. My mother? I whispered. My sister? Both attended the service, according to our scouts. Your mother wore black. Your sister looked appropriately sad. Natasha's voice held no sympathy. Then they went back to their lives like you never existed. Your father's already negotiating a new alliance with Shadowmere Pack, offering trade agreements instead of a bride. I should have felt something, grief, anger, betrayal. But all I felt was a strange, hollow relief. They'd let me go. In their own twisted way, they'd given me what I wanted. Freedom at the cost of being erased from their history entirely. Why did you help me? I asked Natasha. Why bring me here instead of leaving me to die in that cave? That's a question for Declan, not me. Natasha stood. But generally speaking, we don't leave wounded wolves to die. Especially not Omegas who are brave enough or stupid enough to run from a pack like the Thornfields. She moved toward the curtain, then paused. Can you stand? If so, there's someone who wants to meet you. Every muscle in my body protested as I sat up, but I managed to get my feet under me. My injured leg trembled, but held my weight. Natasha steadied me with a hand under my elbow, her grip strong enough to support me, but gentle enough not to hurt. Good, she said approvingly. You're tougher than you look. You'll need to be. She led me through the leather curtain into a larger cavern, and I stopped dead, overwhelmed by what I saw. The den was enormous, a massive cave that had been transformed into a living space. Furs covered the floors and walls, creating insulation against the mountain cold. Fire pits burned at strategic locations, providing warmth and light. There were separate chambers branching off from the main cavern, each one clearly someone's private space. Weapons hung on the walls, bows, spears, knives, all well-maintained and ready for use. And everywhere wolves. Some were in human form, dressed in practical leather and furs. Others were in wolf form, curled by the fires or padding through the space with casual ease. I counted at least 40 individuals, and from the sounds echoing from deeper chambers, there were more. This wasn't a small pack of outcasts. This was a community, a society that functioned entirely outside pack law. Celeste. The deep voice made me turn. Declan Ashford stood near the central fire, and even clothed in simple leather pants and a loose shirt, he was breathtaking. Tall and powerful, moving with a kind of controlled grace that spoke of absolute confidence in his own strength. His golden eyes found mine across the cavern, and I felt the impact like a physical touch. He approached slowly, giving me time to retreat if I wanted. How are you feeling? Alive. I managed. Thanks to you, I think. My healer, Finn, deserves the credit. I just carried you here. A slight smile touched his lips. You're lighter than you look. I was afraid you'd break if I held you too tightly. The image of this massive alpha cradling me gently made something warm unfurl in my chest. Dangerous. I couldn't afford to feel anything for anyone here. Not when I didn't know if I was a guest or a prisoner. Why did you help me? I asked, echoing my question to Natasha. You don't know me. I could be anyone, a spy, a threat, someone bringing trouble to your territory. Declan's expression grew serious. Because I was you once. 8 years ago, I was a young alpha in the Shadowcrest pack. My father wanted me to challenge our alpha for dominance, and said it was my destiny, my birthright. He looked away, toward the fire. But I didn't want to kill someone just to prove I was stronger. So I refused. What happened? I asked softly. My father disowned me, called me weak, unworthy of the alpha name. The pack agreed. An alpha who wouldn't fight for dominance was no alpha at all. His jaw tightened. So I left. I came to these mountains to die, honestly. But I found others like me. Wolves who didn't fit into the box pack society demanded. He gestured around the den. We formed our own pack. One built on choice instead of hierarchy. On freedom instead of obligation. Every wolf here was rejected by the system in some way. And we've been taking in strays who need shelter from the storm ever since. I looked around with new eyes. These weren't mindless rogues. They were refugees. Survivors who'd built something beautiful from the wreckage of their former lives. I can't shift properly, I blurted out. The words came without thinking, born from years of believing I needed to prove I wasn't a burden. I mean, I can, but I'm weak. My wolf is small and pathetic. I'm Omega. I'm not valuable to a pack like this. I'll just stop. Declan's voice was firm but not harsh. He stepped closer, and I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Omegas are valuable, Celeste. Not because of what pack society says breeding stock alliance tools, but because Omega energy is what holds a pack together. It's the glue, the heart. Without Omegas, Alphas tear each other apart fighting for dominance. Natasha nodded from where she'd been watching our exchange. We have 3 other Omegas in the pack. All of them chose to be here. All of them are cherished. She smiled. You'll meet them soon enough. But I can't hunt properly, I protested. I can't fight. I have no useful skills. What can I possibly contribute? Can you learn? Declan asked simply. I blinked.
What?
Can you learn to hunt? To fight? To survive in the wilderness? His golden eyes searched mine. Or are you planning to stay helpless forever? The challenge in his words sparked something in my chest. Anger, maybe.
Or pride I didn't know I possessed.
I can learn anything you can teach me. Good. Declan's smile was warm, genuine. Then you'll earn your place here the same way everyone else did, by choosing to grow instead of accepting the limitations others placed on you. He extended his hand. Welcome to the Wild Ones, Celeste. No debts, no obligations. Just family taking care of family. I stared at his offered hand, my mind reeling. This couldn't be real. Packs didn't work like this. There were hierarchies, dominant structures, alphas who ruled through fear, and omegas who served through submission. That was the natural order, ordained by the moon goddess herself.
Wasn't it?
But here was an entire pack that had rejected that order. And they seemed happy.
Free.
Alive in a way I'd never seen wolves be in my father's carefully controlled territory. I took Declan's hand. His grip was warm and strong, careful not to hurt me. The moment our skin touched, I felt something, a tingle of energy, a spark of connection that made my wolf stir with interest. Mate, she whispered tentatively. Could be mate.
No.
Absolutely not. I just escaped being forced into one unwanted mating. I wasn't about to fall into another, even if this alpha had kind eyes and had saved my life. I pulled my hand back quickly, and if Declan noticed my discomfort, he didn't comment on it. Natasha will show you around, he said. Introduce you to the others. Tomorrow, if you're feeling strong enough, we'll start your training.
He paused. But for tonight, rest. Heal.
Let yourself breathe. He walked away, moving toward a group of wolves who'd been watching our interaction with curious eyes. The moment he was gone, I felt like I could breathe again. He has that effect on people, Natasha said dryly. Alpha presence dialed up to 11, even when he's trying to be gentle. She gestured for me to follow.
Come on.
Let me introduce you to your new family. Over the next hour, I met more wolves than I could possibly remember. There was Finn, the healer, a gentle beta with kind brown eyes and skilled hands who'd saved my leg. River, one of the Omega wolves Natasha had mentioned, who welcomed me with genuine warmth and promised to teach me about the medicinal herbs he cultivated in a hidden garden. Storm, a young alpha who was all barely contained energy and aggressive posturing until Natasha told him to behave. Ember, an older female beta who'd been with the pack since its founding and seemed to know everything about survival in the wilderness. Every wolf had a story. Every wolf had been rejected, cast out, or had chosen to leave their birth pack for reasons ranging from abuse to simple incompatibility with pack structure. And every single one of them looked at me with understanding instead of judgment. It was overwhelming and wonderful and terrifying all at once. By the time Natasha led me back to my chamber, my head was spinning with names and faces and stories. My leg throbbed with exhaustion, but it was a good kind of pain. The pain of healing, not breaking. Get some rest, Natasha said, pausing at the leather curtain. Tomorrow's going to be hard. Declan doesn't go easy on new wolves, even injured ones. Natasha. I called as she turned to leave. Why are you all doing this? Really? She looked back at me, and for the first time, her expression softened into something almost vulnerable. Because someone did it for me once. 3 years ago, I ran from the Riverside pack after killing an alpha who tried to force a mating on me. I expected to die out here. Instead, I found Declan and this pack. She smiled. They gave me a second chance at life. We're just paying it forward. After she left, I lay on my pallet staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had happened. 2 days ago, I'd been running for my life, certain I'd die alone in the wilderness. Now I was lying in a warm den, surrounded by wolves who'd welcomed me without asking for anything in return, who'd seen my weakness and offered to teach me strength, who'd looked at me, broken, defective Omega Celeste, and said, "You're valuable." For the first time in 17 years, I felt something I'd thought was impossible. Hope. Chapter 5. Dawn came too early. I woke to the sound of movement throughout the den, wolves stirring from sleep, voices calling out morning greetings, the clatter of breakfast being prepared. My legs still ached, but the sharp, stabbing pain had dulled to a manageable throb. I was testing my weight on it, seeing how much I could move, when Natasha swept through the leather curtain without knocking. "Up," she commanded, tossing a bundle of clothes at me. "Declan wants you at the training grounds in 20 minutes. I caught the bundle, soft leather pants, a wool tunic, and sturdy boots that looked like they'd actually fit. Training grounds? But my leg. We'll get stronger by using it, not by lying around feeling sorry for yourself. Natasha's amber eyes were sharp but not unkind. Besides, we're starting with archery. You can do that sitting down if you need to. 20 minutes later, I found myself limping through the valley behind Natasha, my new clothes fitting better than anything I'd owned at Thornfield Manor. The morning air was crisp and cold, misting my breath, but the sun was rising over the eastern peaks, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. The training grounds turned out to be a clearing about half a mile from the main den. Targets had been set up at various distances, crude circles carved into tree trunks, straw dummies stuffed with pine needles, even a few moving targets suspended from branches that swayed in the breeze. Declan was already there, along with River and 2 other wolves I'd met briefly the night before. He looked up as we approached, his golden eyes assessing my condition with the practiced gaze of an alpha who knew his pack's capabilities. "How's the leg?" he asked. "Better," I said, trying not to favor it too obviously as I walked. "I can move."
Good.
"Show me your stance." He handed me a bow, a beautiful weapon of dark wood and sinew, well-maintained and clearly expensive. The kind of weapon that should have been carried by a warrior, not an untrained Omega. I took it hesitantly. "I've never." "I know. That's why we're training." Declan moved behind me, his presence warm and solid at my back. Feet shoulder-width apart. "Yeah, like that. Now knock an arrow." His hands guided mine, showing me how to position the arrow, how to grip the bowstring. He was careful not to touch me more than necessary, but every point of contact sent little sparks of awareness through my skin. "Focus," I told myself firmly. "This is survival training, not a mating dance." "Archery isn't about strength," Declan said, his deep voice close to my ear. "It's about control. Breathing. Letting go at exactly the right moment." His hands adjusted my grip. "You're holding too tight. The bow isn't your enemy, Celeste. It's a tool. Treat it with respect, not fear." I loosened my grip, trying to relax muscles that wanted to stay tense.
Good.
"Now that target," he pointed to a circle carved into a tree about 30 yards away. "Don't think about hitting it. Just think about the arrow's path. Visualize where you want it to go." I drew the bowstring back, my arms trembling with the effort. The arrow wobbled in my grip. "Breathe out," Declan instructed, "and release." I let go. The arrow flew wide, missing the target by at least 6 feet and disappearing into the underbrush. "Terrible," Natasha called out cheerfully from where she'd been watching. "But better than I expected for first try." "Again," Declan said, handing me another arrow. "And this time, stop thinking so hard. Your instincts are good. Trust them." We spent the next hour like that. Me shooting arrows, most of them missing the target completely. Declan patiently correcting my form, adjusting my stance, teaching me to breathe and release. River offered encouraging words every time I got close to hitting anything. By the time Declan called a break, my arms were shaking with exhaustion and my fingers were raw from the bowstring. But my last 3 arrows had actually hit the tree, even if they were nowhere near the carved circle. Progress. Not bad for your first lesson, Declan said, taking the bow from my trembling hands. Tomorrow we'll work on accuracy.
For now, rest.
Drink water. Let your muscles recover. I sank onto a fallen log, gratefully accepting the water skin River offered. My leg was throbbing again, my whole body aching from the unfamiliar exercise. But underneath the pain was something else.
Pride.
I'd done something. I learned something. I took the first step toward being more than the helpless Omega everyone thought I was. You did well, River said softly, settling beside me. He was close to my age, maybe a year or 2 older, with warm brown skin and gentle eyes. It took me weeks to hit anything when I started training. You're learning fast. River was from the Eastern Coastal Pack, Natasha added, joining us. Left when his alpha tried to mate him to a visiting dignitary without his consent. River's expression darkened slightly.
Didn't just try.
Actually went through with the claiming ceremony. His voice stayed cheerful, but there was steel underneath. So, I waited until he fell asleep and broke both his legs. Then I ran. I stared at him. This gentle, soft-spoken Omega had crippled an alpha. Don't look so shocked, River laughed. Omegas aren't weak, Celeste. We're just taught to believe we are. There's a difference. He stood, stretching. Want to see the garden? I've been cultivating medicinal herbs. Some of them might help with your leg. I followed him away from the training grounds, Natasha trailing behind us like a protective shadow. The garden turned out to be a hidden clearing sheltered by rocks and thick trees, where River had created a small paradise of healing plants. This is wolfsbane, he said, pointing to purple flowers. In small doses, it sharpens reflexes and dulls pain. The paste fin used on your wounds probably had wolfsbane in it. He moved to another plant. And this is silver mist, helps with infection, speeds healing. You know all this? I asked, amazed. Someone has to. River smiled. In my old pack, they said Omegas were only good for breeding and looking pretty. I wanted to prove I could be more. He glanced at me. You can be more too, you know. Whatever you want. Healer, hunter, warrior. It doesn't matter. Here, your designation doesn't define your possibilities. The words settled over me like a warm blanket. At Thornfield Manor, they told me Omegas couldn't fight. That we were too weak, too fragile. That our role was to support alphas, not challenge them. Your old pack was full of idiots, Natasha said bluntly. Omegas can be anything. It's just that the pack system benefits from keeping you helpless and dependent. She examined one of River's plants. Break an Omega's spirit, convince them they're worthless without an alpha's protection, and you've got a compliant workforce that won't question authority. Is that why you all left? I asked. Because you saw through the system? Some of us left for that reason, Natasha said. Others left because the alternative was death or worse. Her amber eyes grew distant. But we all ended up here for the same reason. We wanted something better. Something real. We spent the rest of the morning in the garden while River taught me about different herbs and their uses. Then Natasha took over, showing me how to properly clean and maintain the bow Declan had given me. This is yours now, she said when I tried to return it. Declan doesn't give gifts lightly. If he gave you a weapon, it means he believes you'll learn to use it. By the time we returned to the den for lunch, I was exhausted but filled with a strange, unfamiliar energy. But I realized, for the first time in my life, I had a purpose beyond being useful to others. The main cavern was bustling with activity. Wolves gathered around the central fire where someone had prepared a feast, roasted deer meat, fresh bread, vegetables from someone's carefully maintained garden, even berries preserved in honey. The smell made my mouth water. Come on, River said, pulling me toward the fire. You need to eat. Training burns energy, and you're too thin as it is. I found myself seated between River and a young she-wolf named Sage, who immediately launched into an enthusiastic explanation of the pack's hunting techniques. Across the fire, Declan sat with his senior wolves, discussing something in low voices, but his golden eyes kept finding mine across the flames. Every time our gazes met, I felt that same spark of connection. That dangerous pull I couldn't afford to acknowledge. He saved you, I reminded myself. He's being kind, because that's what good alphas do. Don't read more into it than exists. But my wolf disagreed, practically purring every time he looked our way. After lunch, Natasha announced it was time for practical survival training. If you're going to live in the wilderness, you need to know how to read the forest, she said, leading me back outside. How to find water, track prey, identify dangerous plants, navigate without getting lost. We spent hours walking through the territory while Natasha pointed out landmarks, showed me how to read animal tracks in the dirt, taught me which berries were safe to eat and which would kill me. She was a patient teacher, never making me feel stupid when I asked questions, always ready to demonstrate again if I didn't understand. You're doing well, she said as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Better than most new wolves. You actually listen instead of pretending you know everything. I don't know anything, I admitted. That's the problem. No, that's your advantage. Natasha smiled. Wolves who think they know everything stop learning. You're starting from zero, which means you have no bad habits to unlearn. You're a blank slate, and we can teach you the right way from the beginning. That night, exhausted and sore but strangely satisfied, I returned to my chamber to find clean clothes laid out and a steaming bowl of stew waiting. Someone had been taking care of me while I was training. The pack system I'd grown up in had been all about hierarchy, alphas on top, betas in the middle, omegas at the bottom. But here, hierarchy seemed fluid. Declan was clearly the alpha, but he didn't lord it over anyone. Wolves helped each other because they chose to, not because they were forced to. It was revolutionary, and it was everything I'd never known I needed. Over the next several days, I fell into a routine. Wake at dawn. Training with Declan and Natasha. Archery. Hand-to-hand combat basics. Survival skills. Lunch with the pack. Afternoons in the garden with River learning about healing herbs. Evenings spent around the fire listening to pack members tell stories. My body changed. Muscles I'd never used before began to develop. My hands grew calloused from the bowstring. My leg healed, the wounds closing into angry red scars that River promised would fade with time. I learned to move through the forest quietly, to read tracks, to distinguish between edible and poisonous plants. And slowly, carefully, I began to learn how to shift. It's all about control, Declan explained during one of our private training sessions. We were in a clearing away from the main den, just the two of us and the setting sun. Your wolf isn't separate from you. She's part of you. You don't force the shift, you allow it. I'd been trying for days, but every time I reached for my wolf, I hit a wall of fear and old training. Omegas don't shift. Omegas are weak. Omegas need protection. Close your eyes, Declan said softly. Stop thinking about what you're supposed to be and just feel what you are. I closed my eyes, breathing slowly, trying to quiet the voices in my head that said I couldn't do this, shouldn't do this, wasn't strong enough for this. And underneath those voices, I felt her. My wolf. Not small and pathetic like I'd always believed. Just waiting. Patient. Ready. That's it, Declan murmured. I can feel your energy shifting. Now, let her out. Don't fight it. Just let go. The change rippled through me like a wave. Still painful, but less so than before. Bones cracking and reforming. Muscle restructuring. Skin sprouting for the color of storm clouds shot through with silver. When it was over, I stood on 4 legs instead of 2, seeing the world through wolf eyes. I was small compared to the other wolves I'd seen. But I wasn't weak. I could feel strength in my muscles, speed in my limbs, senses that were sharper and clearer than they'd ever been in human form. Declan shifted too, his massive black wolf appearing beside me. He was easily twice my size, But when he looked at me with those golden eyes, I didn't see judgment. I saw pride. "Run with me," his wolf seemed to say. And we ran. We ran through the forest, Declan matching his pace to mine, never pushing me beyond what I could handle. We ran until my lungs burned and my legs trembled, until I felt more alive than I'd ever felt in 17 years of being told I was worthless. When we finally stopped at a stream to drink, Declan shifted back to human form. I followed, the change coming easier this time. We stood facing each other across the stream, both breathing hard, both naked and unbothered by it in the way of wolves who'd grown comfortable in their skin. "You shifted," Declan said, his voice filled with warmth. "Completely. No hesitation. Do you know what that means? What am I learning? That you were never weak in the first place." He stepped closer, his golden eyes intense. "Your old pack suppressed your wolf because they were afraid of what she represented. An omega who could shift, who could hunt, who could be independent, that threatens everything the pack system is built on." His words unlocked something in my chest. All these years, I'd believed I was defective, that something was fundamentally wrong with me. But what if the defect had never been mine? What if the system itself was broken? "Declan," I said softly, "thank you for all of this, for seeing me when everyone else looked through me." Something flickered in his eyes, something deep and intense that made my breath catch. For a moment, I thought he might step closer, might reach for me. But he stepped back instead, breaking the moment. "You did this yourself, Celeste," he said quietly. "I just gave you permission to try. The strength was always yours." We walked back to the den in comfortable silence, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. Something more than just teacher and student. Something dangerous and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Chapter 6. 3 weeks. That's how long I'd been with the wild ones when everything changed. 3 weeks of training until my muscles ached and my hands were covered in calluses. 3 weeks of learning to track prey through the forest, to identify threats by scent alone, to shift without pain. 3 weeks of sitting around the fire at night, listening to pack stories and slowly, tentatively beginning to believe I might actually belong somewhere. 3 weeks of peace. It ended on a gray morning when Storm came running into the den, his young face pale with alarm. "Declan," he shouted, his voice echoing through the cavern. "Scouts at the eastern border. They found something." The entire den went silent. Declan rose from where he'd been discussing hunting routes with Natasha and Ember, his alpha presence suddenly sharp and focused. "What did they find?" His voice was calm, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "Markers," Storm said, breathing hard. "Territory markers. Fresh ones. And..." He hesitated, his eyes finding mine across the cavern. "And a message, carved into a tree at the boundary line." My stomach dropped. Declan's golden eyes met mine for a brief moment before he turned to Natasha. "Gather the senior wolves. We will meet in 5 minutes." Then, to me, "Celeste, stay here." But I was already moving, limping towards Storm despite Declan's command. What did the message say? Storm looked uncertainly between me and Declan. "Tell her," Declan said quietly. The storm swallowed hard. It said, "Return what was stolen, or face the consequences. You have 7 days." It was signed by Alpha Victor Thornfield. The cavern erupted in angry murmurs. My father. He'd found me. Somehow, despite declaring me dead, despite giving up the search weeks ago, he'd found this hidden valley and was demanding my return. "That's impossible," Natasha said sharply. "This valley is warded. Ancient magic older than the pack system itself. No one can find it unless we want them to." Victor Thornfield couldn't have. "He brought a shaman," Storm interrupted. "The scouts saw her at the boundary. Old woman, white eyes, covered in ritual scars. She's the one who marked our territory." A chill ran down my spine. A shaman. Someone who could sense magic, manipulate it, potentially break through wards that had protected this valley for generations. Declan's jaw tightened. How many wolves? 23 that we could count. All warriors. Alpha Thornfield is leading them personally. Storm's young face was grim. They've made camp 2 miles from the eastern border. They're not leaving. I felt all eyes turn to me. 40+ wolves, all watching to see how I'd react. To see if the Omega they'd welcomed would bring destruction to their sanctuary. I'll go back, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'll turn myself in. End this before anyone gets hurt.
No.
Declan's voice cracked like a whip. Absolutely not. But they're here, because of me. My hands clenched into fists. My father wants me back, and if I don't go, he'll what? Declan crossed the distance between us in 3 long strides. Attack? Threatened? Try to breach our territory. His golden eyes blazed. Let him try. This is our land. Our home. And we don't give up on pack members, because someone threatens us. Declan's right, Natasha added. Victor Thornfield has no legal standing here. You severed your ties to his pack the moment you crossed the border. Your unclaimed territory, literally and figuratively. He can't demand your return. He's an alpha, I said desperately. He doesn't care about legal standing. He cares about winning. About not being humiliated by a defective Omega who escaped. Then he's going to be disappointed, Ember said firmly. The older beta wolf had been quiet until now, but her voice carried weight. Because we don't abandon our own. Not for threats, not for bribes, not for anything. Around the cavern, wolves nodded in agreement. River stood and moved to my side, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. You're back now, Celeste. That means something here. I wanted to believe them, wanted to accept their protection and their loyalty. But the thought of my father's wolves descending on this peaceful valley, of blood being spilled because I'd been too cowardly to face my fate, it made me sick. Declan seemed to read my thoughts. We need to talk, he said quietly. Privately. He led me out of the main den and up to the rock outcropping where we sometimes trained, away from curious ears. The morning was cold, clouds hanging low over the mountain peaks, threatening snow. For a long moment, we stood in silence, looking out over the valley that had become my home. You're planning to sacrifice yourself, Declan said finally. Not a question. A statement. I'm planning to do what's right, I countered. This pack gave me everything, shelter, training, family. I can't repay that by bringing war to your doorstep. You didn't bring anything. Declan turned to face me, his expression intense. Your father did. He's the one making threats. He's the one who can't accept that you chose freedom over his control. But if I just go back, you'll be miserable. Declan's voice was harsh now. You'll be trapped in a mating you don't want, with a pack that never valued you, living a life that slowly kills everything that makes you who you are. He stepped closer. Is that really what you want? To throw away 3 weeks of growth, of becoming stronger, of learning who you actually are? To go back to being invisible? No, I whispered. But I don't want people dying because of me either. Then we don't let it come to that. Declan's hands came up to cup my face, gentle despite his obvious frustration. Listen to me, Celeste. I've been fighting the pack system my entire life. Fighting the idea that wolves are property, that designations determine worth, that alphas have the right to control everyone beneath them. Every wolf in this pack represents that fight. You represent that fight. His golden eyes searched mine. If we give you back now, we're saying they were right. That Omegas don't deserve freedom. That running from abuse is wrong. That the system works. His voice dropped lower. I'd rather burn this valley to the ground than send that message. You can't mean that, I breathed. I've never meant anything more. His thumbs brushed across my cheekbones, and I realized I was crying. You're worth fighting for, Celeste. You're worth protecting. And if your father wants to test that, then we'll show him exactly what happens when he threatens one of ours. The intensity in his voice, in his touch, in those golden eyes made my heart stutter. This wasn't just an alpha protecting his pack member. This was something deeper. Something personal. Declan, I whispered. Why are you doing this? Really? For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine, his breath warm on my skin. "Because I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. "And I'd rather die fighting for your right to choose your own path than live knowing I sent you back to a cage." The world stopped. Everything I'd been feeling for the past 3 weeks, the connection, the attraction, the way my wolf perked up whenever he was near, suddenly made terrible, wonderful sense. "You can't," I said weakly. "We barely know each other. I know you're brave enough to run into the wilderness alone. I know you're strong enough to survive wounds that should have killed you. I know you work harder than anyone I've ever trained because you're determined to prove you're not worthless." His voice was rough with emotion. "I know that when you smile, really smile, it lights up your entire face. And I know that I've spent 3 weeks trying not to fall for you because it wouldn't be fair to put that pressure on you while you're healing. But I'm terrible at denial. I should have stepped back. I should have told him this was too fast, too complicated, that I'd just escaped one unwanted mating and couldn't possibly handle the pressure of another. But instead, I kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, just a brush of lips. But then Declan made a sound low in his throat and pulled me closer, deepening the kiss. His hands tangled in my hair, and I gripped his shoulders, feeling the solid strength of him beneath my fingers. This was nothing like the clinical mating ceremonies I'd heard described in my old pack. Nothing like the forced bonds and political alliances. This was a choice. This was wanted. This was real. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Declan rested his forehead against mine again. "I'm not asking for a mating bond," he said quietly. "I'm not asking for promises or commitments. I'm just asking you to let me fight for you. Let me protect you. Let me show you what it means to be valued." "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." We stood like that for a long moment, holding each other while the wind picked up around us, bringing the scent of approaching snow. Finally, Declan pulled back. "We should get back. We need to figure out how to handle your father." "What are our options?" I asked as we walked back down to the den. "Not many good ones," Declan admitted. "We can't fight them directly. They outnumber us and have pack law on their side. If we attack first, every pack in the territory will see us as violent rogues. But if we do nothing, they'll eventually breach the wards and attack anyway." "What about negotiation?" I suggested. "What if we request a formal meeting? Try to make them understand that I'm not coming back." "Victor Thornfield doesn't negotiate," Declan said grimly. "Men like him see compromise as weakness." "Then what do we do?" Before Declan could answer, a howl split the air. Not from the den below, but from the eastern border. A warning howl, followed by 2 more in quick succession. The signal that the wards had been breached. Declan and I ran back to the den, where chaos had erupted. Wolves were shifting, grabbing weapons, organizing into defensive positions. Natasha was barking orders, her alpha second instincts taking over. "Report," Declan commanded as we burst into the cavern. One of the scouts, a young beta named Ash, stumbled in, bleeding from a gash across his shoulder. They broke through. The shaman,
"She did something,"
chanted in the old language, used blood magic. The eastern ward just shattered. "How many are through?" Natasha demanded. "All of them. 23 wolves, plus the shaman. Alpha Thornfield is leading them." Ash's face was pale. "They're demanding we send out Celeste for negotiation. Said if we refuse, they'll take her by force." My blood ran cold. This was it. The moment of truth. Declan's expression hardened into something dangerous. Formation Delta. Defensive positions around the den. Non-combatants to the back chambers. No one engages unless I give the order. The pack moved with practiced efficiency, warriors taking positions at the den entrance while River and the other healers ushered the young and injured toward safety. I found myself being pushed toward the back chambers with them. "No," I said firmly, pulling against River's gentle grip. "I'm not hiding while others fight for me." "Celeste," River started. "She's right," Declan interrupted. He handed me the bow he'd given me weeks ago. "If they get through our line, you'll need to defend yourself. Stay behind the warriors, but stay ready." Our eyes met, and I saw everything he couldn't say aloud. I love you.
I'm sorry.
I'll protect you with my last breath. Be careful, I whispered. He nodded once, then shifted into his massive black wolf and moved to the front line with Natasha and the other senior warriors. Through the den entrance, I could see them approaching. My father's wolves, moving through the valley in a tight formation. And at their head, massive and imposing even in human form, was Alpha Victor Thornfield. He stopped just outside the den entrance, well within earshot but out of weapon range.
Smart.
Cautious. Everything I'd learned to expect from him. Declan Ashford. His voice boomed across the clearing. I know you're in there. Come out and face me like an alpha instead of hiding behind your pack of strays. Declan shifted to human form, standing naked and unbothered at the den entrance. Behind him, 40 wolves bristled with barely contained aggression. Victor Thornfield, Declan replied, his voice calm but carrying clear warning. You're trespassing on our territory. State your business and leave. My business is simple. My father's steel-gray eyes scanned the defensive line until they found me, half hidden behind the warriors. You have something that belongs to me. Return my daughter, and we'll leave peacefully. Celeste doesn't belong to you, Declan said flatly. She made her choice. She chose to leave your pack and join ours. Pack law recognizes her right to do so. Pack law recognizes an Omega's obligation to her family, my father countered. She has a contracted mating waiting for her. By running, she's broken that contract and brought dishonor to the Thornfield name. The contract was made without her consent, Declan shot back. Which makes it invalid. Her consent isn't required. My father's voice was ice. She's Omega. Her role is to serve the pack through strategic mating. She doesn't get to choose. Around me, I felt the wild ones bristle with outrage. This was everything they'd run from, the casual dismissal of Omega agency, the treatment of wolves as property instead of people. That's where you're wrong, Declan said, his alpha presence flaring so strongly even I could feel it from inside the den. Every wolf gets to choose. That's the fundamental right you and every other pack alpha deny. And I won't let you take that from her. My father's expression darkened. Then you leave me no choice. I, Alpha Victor Thornfield, formally challenge you for custody of the Omega Celeste. Refuse, and I'll take her by force. Accept, and we settle this the old way. Alpha to alpha, strength to strength. A challenge fight. My heart stopped. I'd seen challenge fights before. Brutal contests where alphas fought to the death or submission to established dominance. They were sacred under pack law, and the winner's word was absolute. If Declan accepted and lost, I'd be forced to return to my father. If he refused, my father would attack, and wolves would die. Either way, I lost. Chapter 7. The silence that followed my father's challenge was absolute. Every wolf in the clearing, both wild ones and Thornfield warriors, stood frozen, waiting for Declan's response. The ancient law of challenge was sacred, binding, older than any pack structure or territorial agreement. Once issued, it couldn't be ignored. Accept, and Declan would face my father in single combat. Refuse, and he'd be branded a coward, his authority questioned, his pack vulnerable to attack, without the protection of pack law. My father had trapped him perfectly. Declan, don't, I said, pushing forward through the defensive line. Natasha tried to stop me, but I shook her off.
Please.
This is what he wants. He's twice your age, twice your experience. He's Celeste. Declan's voice was gentle but firm. He didn't take his eyes off my father. Go back inside. I won't let you die for me, I said desperately. I'll go back. I'll honor the contract. Just don't. That's not your choice to make. Now Declan did look at me, his golden eyes blazing with an intensity that took my breath away. This stopped being just about you the moment he demanded I hand over a pack member like property. This is about every wolf who's ever run from abuse. Every Omega who's ever been told they don't deserve agency. Every wolf in this valley chose freedom over chains. He turned back to my father. I accept your challenge, Victor Thornfield. Name your terms. A cold smile spread across my father's face. Traditional combat. Shifted form. Fight until submission or death. The winner takes custody of the Omega and the loser's pack submits to the winner's authority. Horror washed over me. If Declan lost, not only would I be dragged back to Thornfield territory, but the entire Wild Ones pack would fall under my father's control. Everything they'd built, every wolf who'd found sanctuary here, all of it would be destroyed. Declan, no. Natasha stepped forward, her amber eyes fierce. Those terms are too broad. If you lose, I won't lose. Declan's voice was absolute certainty. But if I do, make sure the young ones get out. Take them south, past the border territories. Find new land. You can't be serious, I breathed. You're risking everything. I'm fighting for everything, Declan corrected. He finally looked at me fully, and the raw emotion in his eyes made my chest ache. Your father represents a system that breaks wolves and calls it tradition, that treats people like commodities and calls it duty. If I don't fight him now, if I let fear make my decisions, then what's the point of any of this? He stepped closer, his voice dropping so only I could hear. I told you I was falling in love with you. I meant it, and I'd rather die proving you deserve to be free than live knowing I was too cowardly to try. Tears burned my eyes. You're an idiot, probably. A slight smile touched his lips. But I'm your idiot, at least for the next few hours. Before I could respond, he turned back to my father. I accept all terms. When do we fight?
Now.
My father began stripping off his clothes, preparing to shift. Unless you need time to make peace with your pack before you die. I'm ready when you are, old man. Declan's voice held a dangerous edge. Let's see if your legendary strength is anything more than reputation and bullying. The two alphas faced each other across the clearing while wolves from both packs formed a wide circle. This was sacred ground now, neutral space where the challenge would be decided. No outside interference allowed, no pack bonds that could give either fighter an advantage. Just two alphas and the brutal law of survival. Natasha pulled me back to the edge of the circle, her grip on my arm tight enough to bruise. Whatever happens, you don't interfere. Challenge law is absolute. If you try to help him, you'll invalidate the fight and he'll be declared forfeit. But no buts. Her amber eyes were hard. The best thing you can do right now is trust him. Declan's fought challenge matches before. He knows what he's doing. Around us, the Wild Ones were silent, faces grim. River stood nearby, his gentle features twisted with worry. Storm was vibrating with barely contained aggression, clearly wanting to fight but knowing he couldn't. Ember had her hand on the young beta's shoulder, holding him back. My father finished undressing and shifted. The transformation was brutal and efficient, bones cracking, muscle restructuring, his massive frame becoming something even larger and more terrifying. His wolf form was enormous, easily the largest I'd ever seen, with dark gray fur shot through with silver and those same steel gray eyes burning with cold intelligence. He'd been an alpha for over 30 years, had fought and won countless challenges, had built a reputation as one of the most powerful alphas in the Western Territories. And Declan was going to fight him alone. Declan shifted as well, his black wolf appearing in a fluid motion that spoke of years of practice. He was smaller than my father, not by much, but enough to be noticeable. Younger, less experienced, leading a pack of outcasts instead of an established territory with generations of bloodline behind it. But there was something in his golden eyes, a fierce determination, a refusal to submit, that gave me hope. The two wolves began to circle each other, and the clearing fell silent except for the sound of paws on dirt and heavy breathing. Both alphas were assessing, looking for weakness, calculating their first move. My father struck first. He lunged forward with terrifying speed for something so massive, jaws aimed for Declan's throat. But Declan was faster. He twisted aside at the last second, letting my father's momentum carry him past, then darted in to snap at his exposed flank. First blood to Declan. But it was only a glancing blow, barely breaking skin. My father whirled around, surprisingly agile, and his massive paw caught Declan across the shoulder. Claws raked through black fur, and Declan yelped, stumbling back. They separated, circling again. Both are bleeding now. Both fully engaged. He's faster, River murmured beside me. Smaller size gives him an advantage in speed and agility. But Victor has raw power, Natasha countered grimly. One solid hit from those jaws, and it's over. The fight continued in brutal exchanges. Declan would dart in lightning fast, scoring hits on my father's sides and legs. But my father's counterattacks, when they landed, were devastating. Each blow sent Declan stumbling. Each impact drew more blood. They were both taking damage, but Declan was taking more. I couldn't watch, but I couldn't look away. Every time my father's jaws snapped closed in empty air where Declan had been a heartbeat before, my heart stopped. Every time Declan's smaller form was thrown across the clearing by a massive paw strike, I bit back screams. This was going to kill him. My father was too strong, too experienced. Declan was fighting bravely, but brave didn't mean victorious. 5 minutes into the fight, Declan was limping heavily on his left hind leg. Blood matted his black fur from dozens of wounds. His breathing was labored, each exhale visible in the cold morning air. But he wasn't submitting. I wasn't giving up. My father, by contrast, was barely winded. A few scratches on his flanks, a torn ear, but nothing serious. He was wearing Declan down, waiting for exhaustion to make the younger Alpha sloppy. Submit, my father's growl seemed to say as he advanced slowly. Submit and spare yourself more pain. Declan's response was to lunge forward one more time, using the last of his speed to slip under my father's guard. His jaws found purchase on my father's front leg, biting down hard enough to crack bone. My father howled in pain and fury, shaking Declan off violently. The smaller wolf flew across the clearing and hit the ground hard, not getting up immediately. No, I whispered. Please no. Declan struggled to his feet, his entire body trembling with exhaustion. 3 of his legs were working properly, but the 4th dragged uselessly. Multiple ribs were probably broken. His right eye was swollen shut, but he was still standing, still fighting. My father limped forward on his injured leg, rage burning in his steel-gray eyes. This upstart alpha had actually hurt him, had made him bleed in front of witnesses. That was unforgivable. He was going to kill Declan. Not just win the challenge, but end him completely. I forfeit. The words burst from my lips before I could stop them. I forfeit the challenge. I'll come back. Just stop. Please stop. Every eye turned to me. The fight paused, both wolves breathing hard, blood dripping onto the dirt. Celeste, no. Natasha hissed, but I was already pushing forward, breaking through the circle. I'll honor the contract, I said loudly, addressing my father. I'll mate whoever you choose. I'll do whatever you want. Just call off the fight. Please. My father shifted back to human form, standing naked and bleeding but victorious. It's too late for that, daughter. The challenge was issued and accepted. It continues until one of us submits or dies. Then I submit. I turned to Declan, who was still in wolf form, still watching me with those golden eyes. I'm not worth dying for. I'm not worth any of this. Please, just let me go back. Declan shifted as well, his human form even more battered than his wolf. Standing was clearly painful, but he met my eyes with absolute certainty. No. Declan. You're worth fighting for, Celeste. His voice was rough, damaged, but clear. You're worth protecting. And I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself, because you've been taught your whole life that you're worthless. He looked at my father. The challenge continues. Declan Ashford. A new voice cut through the clearing, commanding and cold. Stand down. Everyone turned. A figure stepped out of the forest at the edge of the clearing, tall and imposing, moving with the kind of presence that made even alphas instinctively straighten. He was dressed in dark traveling clothes, his hair black as midnight, but it was his eyes that caught my breath. Ice blue, sharp as winter frost, capable of pinning you in place with a single glance. Lucian Nightshade, alpha of the most powerful pack in the Western Territories. The wolf my sister had been trying to claim at the autumn gathering when I'd ruined everything. What was he doing here? My father's expression shifted from rage to calculation. Alpha Nightshade. This is an unexpected honor. Is it? Lucian's ice-blue eyes swept the clearing, taking in the two bleeding alphas, the defensive formations, the tension thick enough to cut. I was under the impression you were conducting a formal challenge. Those require neutral witnesses of equivalent rank to ensure fairness. His gaze settled on my father. I see no such witnesses here, Victor. Which makes this less of a legal challenge and more of an ambush. My father's jaw tightened. This is a private pack matter, involving an Omega who legally severed ties with your pack weeks ago. Lucian moved forward, his presence filling the clearing like a physical force. By pack law, Celeste Thornfield is an independent wolf who can seek sanctuary wherever she chooses. You have no more claim on her than I do. She broke a mating contract, my father countered. A contract she never consented to. Lucian's voice was cold. I've reviewed the case. Spoken to several legal scholars. Your contract is invalid on 3 separate grounds, Victor. If you force this issue, I'll bring it before the Council of Alphas myself. The Council? The governing body that presided over all pack disputes. If they ruled against my father, it would humiliate him in front of every alpha in the territories. Why do you care? My father demanded. The girl is nothing to you. She represents a principle I care about deeply. Lucian's ice-blue eyes found mine. The principle that wolves, all wolves, regardless of designation, deserve agency. The right to choose their own path. He looked back at my father. I won't stand by and watch you turn back centuries of progress because your pride was wounded. This is none of your concern, Nightshade. I'm making it my concern. Lucian's alpha presence flared, so powerful it made even my father step back. Stand down, Victor. Take your wolves and leave. Or face me in a challenge fight. Your choice. The clearing went deathly silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Lucian Nightshade was legendary, young but utterly ruthless, with a combat record that terrified even veteran alphas. My father was powerful, but he'd just fought Declan. He was injured, exhausted, in no shape to face a fresh opponent who was probably stronger than him, even at full strength. It was a checkmate disguised as a choice. My father's face went through a series of expressions: rage, calculation, humiliation. Finally, he shifted back to human form and began gathering his clothes. This isn't over, he said quietly, dangerously. You've made an enemy today, Nightshade. And you. He looked at me with such cold hatred it felt like a physical blow. You're dead to me. Dead to the Thornfield pack. If you ever set foot on our territory again, you'll be treated as a rogue and killed on sight. He dressed quickly and gestured to his wolves. We're leaving. The Thornfield warriors filed out of the clearing, following their alpha back toward the broken eastern ward. Within minutes, they disappeared into the forest, leaving only bloodstains and broken ground as evidence they'd been there. I stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Lucian Nightshade had saved us.
Save me.
The powerful alpha, who could have any Omega in the territories, had risked political backlash with my father to defend a wolf he didn't even know. Why? I asked, turning to face him. Why did you do that? Lucian studied me for a long moment with those unsettling ice-blue eyes. Because I was at the autumn gathering. I saw how your sister treated you, how your family dismissed you. His expression was unreadable. And I've spent too many years watching the pack system break good wolves. I won't be complicit anymore. He turned to Declan, who'd collapsed against Natasha, barely conscious. Get him to your healers. He fought well, but he needs treatment immediately. Then, without another word, Lucian Nightshade walked away, disappearing back into the forest as mysteriously as he'd arrived. I rushed to Declan's side, where River and Finn were already working to stabilize him. His breathing was shallow, his skin clammy with shock and blood loss. Stay with me, I whispered, gripping his hand. Please, Declan, stay with me. His golden eyes cracked open, unfocused but still fierce. Told you. I wouldn't lose. You idiot, I sobbed. You beautiful, brave, stupid idiot. He smiled slightly. You're idiot. Then his eyes closed, and River was shouting for help, and everything dissolved into chaos as we fought to save the Alpha who'd been willing to die for my freedom. Chapter 8. Declan hovered between consciousness and darkness for 3 days. Finn worked tirelessly in the healing chamber, using every herb, every remedy, every ounce of knowledge he possessed to keep the Alpha alive. River assisted, his gentle hands cleaning wounds and applying poultices while I sat useless beside Declan's still form, holding his hand and praying to a moon goddess I wasn't sure was listening. The injuries were extensive. 4 cracked ribs, a fractured left leg, internal bleeding that Finn had to cauterize with heated silver, an agonizing process that made even unconscious Declan scream. Dozens of lacerations from my father's claws, each one deep enough to leave permanent scars. His right eye was so swollen that Finn worried he might lose vision in it permanently. He should be dead, Finn told me on the second night, his kind face drawn with exhaustion. By every measure of medical knowledge I possess, he should have bled out in that clearing. But he's still fighting. He looked at me with something like understanding. He has something to live for. I didn't leave Declan's side except when Finn forced me to eat or sleep. Even then, I only managed a few hours before nightmares drove me back to his chamber, needing to see his chest rise and fall, needing proof he was still alive. Natasha visited frequently, updating me on pack business that seemed trivial compared to Declan's condition. The eastern ward had been repaired by a visiting shaman from a friendly pack. Apparently word of our confrontation with Victor Thornfield had spread, and several packs had quietly sent support. Food, supplies, even a few warriors offering to help defend our territory if needed. The pack system is changing, Natasha said on the 3rd day, settling onto a stool beside me. What Lucian Nightshade did, publicly defending an Omega's right to choose. That's going to have repercussions. Good ones, I think. Why did he do it? I asked, not for the first time. He doesn't know me. Doesn't owe me anything. Maybe he's tired of watching the system break people. Natasha's amber eyes were thoughtful. Or maybe he sees which way the wind is blowing. The old ways are dying, Celeste. Slowly but dying. Packs like ours, we're the future. And smart alphas like Nightshade know it. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that Declan's sacrifice, my escape, everything we'd fought for meant something beyond just our personal freedom. But right now, with Declan unconscious and broken because of me, it was hard to see past the guilt. This is my fault, I whispered. If I hadn't run. If you hadn't run, you'd be in Shadowmere Pack right now, made it to a stranger, slowly dying inside. Natasha's voice was sharp. And Declan would still be here, safe, but living with the knowledge that he'd failed to help someone who needed it. Is that really better? At least he wouldn't be. I gestured helplessly at Declan's battered form. He'd be broken in a different way. Natasha stood, her expression softening slightly. Stop blaming yourself for other people's cruelty, Celeste. Your father chose to hunt you down. Declan chose to protect you. Those are their choices, not yours. Your only choice was to be free, and that's never wrong. After she left, I sat in the quiet chamber listening to Declan breathe, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest. Finn had bandaged his wounds carefully, but I could still see the damage. Purple bruises covering his torso, his left leg splinted and elevated, his face swollen and discolored. He'd done this for me. This beautiful, brave Alpha had nearly died defending my right to choose my own path. I love you, I whispered to his unconscious form. I know I haven't said it yet, and I'm sorry. I was scared. Scared of feeling too much, too fast. Scared that loving someone would give them power over me like my family had. I gripped his hand tighter. But you're not them. You've never tried to control me. You've only ever tried to set me free. His fingers twitched in my grip. Just barely, but enough to make my heart leap. Declan. I leaned closer. Can you hear me? His golden eyes cracked open, unfocused at first, then slowly sharpening as they found my face. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Don't try to talk, I said quickly. Let me get Finn. His grip on my hand tightened, stopping me. He tried again, and this time, his voice came out as a rough whisper. Did we win? A laugh bubbled up through my tears. You idiot. Yes, we won. My father left. You're alive. We're safe. Good. His eyes started to close again. Worth it? No, it wasn't, I said fiercely. You almost died. You could have. My voice broke. But I didn't. His eyes opened again, more focused now. Still here. Still fighting for you. You don't have to fight anymore, I told him. Just rest. Heal. Let us take care of you for once. A slight smile touched his battered lips. Bossy Omega. Stubborn Alpha. We sat like that for a long moment, just looking at each other. Then Declan's eyes grew serious despite the pain clearly etched in his features. Meant what I said, he whispered. Before the fight. I'm falling in love with you, Celeste. No pressure. No expectations. Just truth. I know. I brought his hand to my lips, kissing his bruised knuckles gently. I'm falling in love with you too. Maybe I have been since that first day when you found me in a cave and chose to help instead of leaving me to die. Best decision? I made it. His eyes were starting to close again, exhaustion pulling him back under. Stay. I'm not going anywhere, I promised. I'll be right here when you wake up. He smiled and let himself drift back into healing sleep. True to my word, I stayed. And over the next several days, I watched Declan slowly, painfully, begin to recover. Werewolf healing was remarkable. Injuries that would have killed a human or taken months to heal instead took weeks. But it was still a brutal process. Every movement caused pain. Every breath reminded him of broken ribs that were still knitting back together. But Declan refused to stay down longer than absolutely necessary. On the 5th day, he insisted on sitting up despite Finn's protests. On the 7th, he was attempting to stand, leaning heavily on me and River for support. By the 10th day, he was limping around his chamber, determined to regain his strength. You're the worst patient I've ever had, Finn told him in exasperation. If you tear those stitches again, I'm going to let Natasha knock you unconscious and tie you to the bed. Empty threats, Declan replied, though he was breathing hard from the simple effort of walking to the chamber entrance and back. You're too soft-hearted. I'm reconsidering that, Finn muttered, but he was smiling. The pack celebrated quietly when Declan finally emerged from his chamber 2 weeks after the fight. He couldn't participate in training yet, couldn't shift without risking his healing injuries, but just seeing him on his feet and moving brought a wave of relief through the wild ones. We gathered around the central fire that night, sharing a meal of roasted venison and root vegetables. Declan sat in his usual place, but he kept me close beside him, his hand finding mine frequently as if reassuring himself I was real and safe. I owe you all an apology, he said when the meal was finished, his voice carrying through the cavern. I put the entire pack at risk by accepting that challenge. If Lucian Nightshade hadn't intervened, if things had gone differently, he shook his head. You all could have lost everything because of my pride. It wasn't pride, Natasha said firmly. It was the principle. And we all agreed with you. Every wolf in this den would have made the same choice. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the pack. Celeste's pack, Storm added, his young voice fierce. We protect the pack. That's what we do. You showed the pack system that we won't back down, Ember said. That we're willing to fight for our right to exist. That matters, Declan. It matters more than you know. River stood, his gentle face serious. I left my birth pack because my alpha claimed me against my will. I've spent 3 years here learning that I'm more than what they said I was. Watching you fight for Celeste's right to choose. That validated everything I believe. Everything we've built here. His warm eyes met mine. You're worth fighting for, Celeste. We all are. That's the whole point. Around the fire, wolves nodded and voiced their agreement. Young and old, Alpha and Omega, every wolf in the wild ones understood what Declan's challenge had really been about. Not just one Omega's freedom, but the freedom of every wolf who'd ever been told they didn't deserve agency, dignity, choice. I felt tears burning my eyes and didn't bother to hide them. "Thank you," I whispered. "All of you. I don't know how to repay." "You don't repay your family," Declan interrupted gently. "That's the first rule of this pack. We take care of each other, because that's what family does. No debts, no obligations. Just love." Later that night, after the fire had died down and most of the pack had retired to their chambers, Declan and I walked slowly up to the rock outcropping where we'd shared our first kiss. His movements were still stiff and painful, but he insisted on making the climb. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. The moon was nearly full, painting everything in silver light. "I've been thinking," Declan said, settling carefully onto a flat rock. "About what happens next." "What do you mean?" I sat beside him, close enough that our shoulders touched. "Your father declared you dead to his pack. That means legally, you're a free agent, no ties, no obligations." His golden eyes found mine in the moonlight. "You could go anywhere. Join any pack that would take you. Even form your own pack if you wanted." My heart clenched. "Are you asking me to leave?" "Moon goddess, no." Declan's hand found mine, gripping tight. "I'm asking you to stay. Not because you have nowhere else to go, not because you owe us anything, but because you choose to. Because this is where you want to be." "I do want to be here," I said immediately. "This is home." I took a breath. "You're home, Declan. Then stay with me." He turned to face me fully, his expression vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. "Not just as a pack member. Stay with me as my mate, my partner, my equal." My breath caught. "Declan, I know it's fast," he continued quickly. "I know you just escaped one forced mating and probably have trauma around the whole concept. I'm not asking for a formal bond ceremony or any of that traditional nonsense. I'm just asking if you want to build a life with me, as partners who choose each other every day." I looked at this alpha who'd been willing to die for my freedom, who'd never once tried to control or diminish me, who'd seen me at my weakest and called me strong, who taught me that love wasn't about ownership, but about mutual choice and respect. "Yes," I said simply. "Yes, I want to build a life with you." The smile that spread across his face was radiant despite the bruises and healing wounds. He cupped my face gently with both hands and kissed me, soft and careful and full of promise. "I love you, Celeste," he murmured against my lips. "I love you too," I replied. "Even though you're reckless and stubborn and nearly gave me a heart attack." "I'll try to avoid nearly dying in the future," he promised, grinning. "Please do." We sat together on that outcropping for hours, wrapped in each other's arms, talking about everything and nothing. About the pack's future, about the changes happening in the territories, about small, intimate things like our favorite foods and childhood memories. For the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. No fear of what tomorrow would bring. No worry about being controlled or diminished. Just the quiet certainty that I'd found where I belonged. As the moon reached its peak, Declan shifted slightly to look at me. "There's one more thing we should discuss." "What's that?" "Lucian Nightshade." Declan's expression turned thoughtful. "He saved us, Celeste. Without his intervention, I'd be dead and you'd be back in your father's custody. We owe him a debt." I'd been trying not to think about the mysterious alpha who'd appeared at exactly the right moment. "What kind of debt?" "I don't know yet. But wolves like Lucian don't do favors without expecting something in return eventually." Declan's golden eyes were serious. "We need to be prepared for the day he calls that debt in." A chill ran down my spine. "Do you think he'll ask for something terrible?" "I don't know. From what I've heard, Lucian Nightshade is ruthless but fair. He won't ask for anything that crosses moral lines. But he will ask for something significant." Declan squeezed my hand. "When he does, we'll face it together. Just like we face everything else." Together, I agreed. We stayed on that outcropping until dawn began to paint the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. Then, Moving carefully to accommodate Declan's still healing injuries, we made our way back down to the den. To our pack. Our family. Our home. Whatever the future held, debts to be paid, challenges to face, systems to change, we'd handle it together. Because that's what love meant. That's what freedom meant. Choosing each other. Every single day, no matter what came next. Chapter 9. Winter settled over the valley like a thick blanket of white silence. 3 months had passed since the challenge fight. 3 months of peace, of healing, of learning what it meant to truly belong somewhere. Declan had recovered fully, though he carried new scars that mapped the price he'd paid for my freedom. The pack had grown, word spread about the wild ones, and more refugees arrived seeking sanctuary. We now numbered over 70 wolves, all bound by choice rather than obligation. I'd changed too. The frightened, invisible Omega who'd fled Thornfield Manor seemed like a distant memory. I could hunt now, bringing down deer with arrows that flew true. I could fight with basic competence, enough to defend myself if necessary. I could shift without pain, my wolf form growing stronger with each transformation. But more than physical changes, I'd found my voice. My purpose. I worked with River in the healing chamber, learning about herbs and remedies. I helped train new arrivals, teaching them that their designations didn't define their capabilities. I sat in pack councils, offering insights that Declan and Natasha actually listened to and valued. I was happy. Truly deeply happy. Which is probably why I should have known it wouldn't last. The messenger arrived on a gray morning when snow fell soft and steady from heavy clouds. I was in the training clearing with Sage, a young Omega who'd arrived 2 months ago, fleeing an arranged mating, showing her proper arrow stance when Storm came running through the trees. "Celeste," he shouted, breathing hard. "Declan needs you at the den."
Now.
He paused, catching his breath. "There's someone here, from the Nightshade pack." My heart stuttered.
The debt.
After 3 months of quiet, Lucian Nightshade was calling in the debt. I ran back to the den with Storm, Sage following close behind. The main cavern was tense when we arrived. The entire pack gathered in defensive clusters, all eyes on the stranger standing near the central fire. He was tall and lean, dressed in dark traveling clothes marked with the Nightshade pack insignia, a silver wolf silhouetted against a black moon. His hair was pale blonde, almost white, and his eyes were a startling violet color that seemed unnatural even for a werewolf. He stood with the casual confidence of someone who knew he was dangerous and didn't need to prove it. Declan stood across from him, Natasha flanking his right side, both alphas radiating controlled tension. They looked ready for a fight, but hoping to avoid one. "Celeste," Declan said when he saw me, relief flickering across his face. "This is Matthias Frost, Beta Commander of the Nightshade Pack. He's brought a message from Alpha Lucian." Matthias turned those unsettling violet eyes on me, his expression unreadable. "Celeste Thornfield. Or should I say, Celeste of the Wild Ones." A slight smile touched his lips. "My Alpha sends his greetings and a formal invitation." "Invitation to what?" I asked, moving to stand beside Declan. His hand found mine immediately, a gesture of solidarity and support. "The Winter Gathering," Matthias replied. "It's held every year at the Nightshade Estate, bringing together all the major packs in the Western Territories for diplomacy, trade negotiations, and celebration." He pulled a sealed letter from his jacket. "This year, Alpha Lucian has extended a personal invitation to the Wild Ones pack. You're invited to attend as honored guests." The cavern erupted in murmurs. The Winter Gathering was legendary, a neutral ground where even rival packs could meet safely, where alliances were forged and broken, where the political landscape of the territories was shaped for the coming year. But the Wild Ones had never been invited before. We were outcasts, rogues in the eyes of pack society. Our presence at such an event would be a statement, Declan said slowly, clearly thinking the same thing I was. "Lucian's making a statement by inviting us." "Precisely." Matthias's smile widened. "My Alpha believes it's time the Wild Ones were recognized as a legitimate pack. Time the other alphas understood that wolves have choices beyond submission or exile. He held out the letter. This is your formal invitation. Whether you accept it is, of course, entirely up to you. Declan took the letter, breaking the wax seal marked with Lucian's personal insignia. His golden eyes scanned the contents, his expression growing more troubled with each line. What does it say? I asked quietly. It's a formal invitation to attend the winter gathering as honored guests, Declan said slowly. We'd have full diplomatic protections. No pack could attack or challenge us while we're there. We'd be given chambers in the Nightshade estate, provided with food and supplies, treated as equals. That sounds generous, Natasha said carefully. What's the catch? The catch is that our presence will force every alpha in the territories to acknowledge us as legitimate, Declan replied. It'll validate everything we represent. Wolves choosing their own paths, Omegas having agency, packs built on consent rather than hierarchy. He looked up at Matthias. Your alpha is using us as a political tool. My alpha is giving you a platform, Matthias corrected. What you do with that platform is your choice. But he believes, and I agree, that the time has come for change. The old ways are dying. Your pack represents the future, Alpha Declan. The question is whether you're brave enough to step into the light and claim that future publicly. The challenge in his words was clear. This wasn't just an invitation. It was a test. A chance to prove that the Wild Ones weren't just hiding in the mountains, but were a force that demanded recognition and respect. It was also dangerous. Stepping into pack society, surrounded by alphas who saw us as threats to their authority, we'd be walking into a nest of vipers with only Lucian's protection as a shield. I need to discuss this with my pack, Declan said finally. We'll give you our answer by sunset. Matthias inclined his head. I'll wait. My alpha instructed me to be patient. That slight smile again. Though I should mention, your old pack will be in attendance, Celeste. Alpha Victor Thornfield and his family, including your sister. My blood ran cold. Face my family again? Stand in the same room with the people who'd called me worthless, who'd tried to sell me like property, who declared me dead rather than admit I'd successfully escaped. All the more reason to attend, Natasha said fiercely, reading my expression. Show them you're not just surviving, you're thriving. Let them see what you've become. Or all the more reason to stay here, safe, where they can't hurt us, River countered quietly. The winter gathering might be neutral ground, but accidents happen. Poisoned wine, mysterious attacks, convenient disappearances. Lucian Nightshade's protection is absolute, Matthias interrupted. Any pack that breaks guest right at the gathering would face his direct challenge. And no alpha in the territories is foolish enough to risk that. His violet eyes were serious now. You'll be safe. That much I can promise. After Matthias was escorted to a guest chamber to wait for our decision, Declan called an emergency pack council. The senior wolves gathered, Natasha, River, Ember, Finn, Storm, and several others who'd proven their wisdom and judgment over the months.
And me.
Because I was Declan's mate now, even if we hadn't performed a formal bonding ceremony. My voice carried weight in pack decisions. Thoughts? Declan asked, looking around the circle of trusted wolves. It's a trap, Storm said immediately. The pack alphas hate us. They see us as threats. Getting us all in one place, away from our territory? Perfect opportunity to eliminate the problem. Lucian Nightshade wouldn't risk his reputation by allowing that, Ember countered. His word as host is sacred. If he promises protection, he'll deliver it. But what does he want in return? River asked. He's saved us from Celeste's father. Now he's offering us legitimacy and a political platform. That's two massive favors. Eventually, he'll ask for something significant in return. Maybe he already is, Natasha said thoughtfully. By bringing us to the gathering, we become his statement. His proof that change is possible. We're not just guests, we're his evidence that the pack system can evolve. So we're pawns in his political game, Finn said with a frown. Or we're partners in necessary change, Declan replied. There's a difference.
He looked at me.
Celeste, you've been quiet. What do you think? All eyes turned to me. I took a breath, gathering my thoughts. I think we're scared, I said slowly. And we have every right to be. Stepping into pack society, surrounded by alphas who see us as threats, it's terrifying. I looked around at the wolves who'd become my family. But River, you told me once that we're not weak, we're just taught to believe we are. The same applies here. We're not powerless. We've built something real, something that works. Something that proves there's another way. I met Declan's golden eyes. If we hide in this valley forever, we're admitting they were right to dismiss us. We're accepting that we're only safe when we're invisible. But if we go to the gathering, if we stand among them as equals and show them what we've built. I paused. We might actually change things. For every wolf still trapped in abusive packs. For every Omega being sold into unwanted matings. For everyone who believes they're worthless because of what they were born as. Silence fell over the council. She's right, Natasha said finally. We've spent years hiding, building, growing stronger in secret. Maybe it's time to stop hiding. It's dangerous, Amber warned. Even with Lucian's protection, showing ourselves to the pack alphas is a massive risk. Everything we've done has been dangerous, Declan replied. Every wolf we've taken in, every challenge to pack authority, every day we exist as we are, it's all been risky. At some point, we have to decide if we're content to just survive, or if we want to actually change the system that broke us. He stood, his alpha presence filling the chamber. I'm going to attend the winter gathering. I'm going to stand in that room full of alphas who think I'm weak, and I'm going to show them what real strength looks like, what real leadership looks like, what a pack built on choice instead of fear looks like. His golden eyes swept the council. But I won't order anyone to come with me. This has to be a choice. So I'm asking, who's willing to walk into the Viper's nest and help me prove we're not the ones who should be afraid? Natasha stood first. I'm with you. The River stood next. Me too. One by one, every wolf in the council rose. Even Storm, who'd called it a trap, stood with determined fire in his young eyes. Then it's decided, Declan said. We attend the winter gathering. He looked at me. Celeste, I need you to understand something. If we go, you'll have to face your family. Your father, your mother, your sister, they'll all be there. It's going to be painful. Are you ready for that? I thought about the girl I'd been with 3 months ago. Terrified, invisible, convinced she was worthless. That girl would have said no. Would have hidden rather than face the people who'd broken her. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I'm ready, I said firmly. Let them see what I've become. Let them see that running was the best decision I ever made. Declan's smile was fierce and proud. Then we'll show them together. Matthias was pleased when we delivered our acceptance that evening. My alpha will be glad. He had faith you'd make the right choice. Those violet eyes studied me with unnerving intensity. He's looking forward to meeting you properly, Celeste. He's heard interesting things about the Omega who sparked a revolution. I didn't spark anything, I protested. I just ran away. Sometimes that's all it takes, Matthias replied. One brave soul who says enough and refuses to accept their fate. Others follow. Change begins. He handed Declan a second letter. Details about the gathering, when to arrive, what to bring, protocol to follow. The event begins in 2 weeks. That should give you time to prepare. 2 weeks. 14 days to get ready to face pack society as equals instead of outcasts. 14 days to prepare for seeing my family again. 14 days to brace myself for whatever game Lucian Nightshade was playing. It felt like both too much time and not enough. That night, I lay in Declan's arms in the chamber we now shared, listening to his steady heartbeat beneath my ear. Are you scared? I asked quietly. Terrified, he admitted. But also hopeful? Is that strange? No. I traced patterns on his chest, feeling the raised scars from the challenge fight. I'm scared too. But I'm also excited. For the first time, we're not just surviving. We're actually trying to change things. What if we fail? Declan's voice was soft. What if we go to the gathering and nothing changes? What if the other alphas laugh at us, or worse? Then we come home, I said simply. Back to this valley, to our pack, to the life we've built. We'll still have each other. We'll still have our family. That's not nothing, Declan. That's everything. His arms tightened around me. When did you become so wise? I learned from a very stubborn alpha who taught me that choosing yourself is the bravest thing you can do. I tilted my head up to look at him. You gave me that gift, Declan. The gift of knowing I'm worth fighting for. Now it's time to give that gift to others. He kissed me then, slow and deep and full of love and promise and fear and hope all tangled together. And in the darkness of our chamber, wrapped in each other's arms, we prepared ourselves for the battle ahead. Not a battle of claws and teeth this time, but something far more dangerous. A battle of ideas, of change, of proving that the future could be different from the past. The winter gathering was 2 weeks away, and the wild ones were going to war. Chapter 10. The journey to Nightshade territory took 3 days. We traveled as a pack, 20 wolves making the trek through mountain passes and dense forests, moving carefully through territories that belonged to other packs. Declan led, with Natasha scouting ahead and Storm watching our rear. River, Finn, and I stayed in the middle of the formation, surrounded by warriors who'd sworn to protect the more vulnerable pack members. I'd never been this far from the valley. Never seen so much of the world beyond the small corners I'd known. First Thornfield Manor, then our hidden sanctuary. The landscape was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Vast stretches of wilderness where anything could be hiding. Pack borders marked with scent markers that made my wolf nervous. Evidence of other wolves everywhere, tracks, kills, territorial claims carved into trees. We avoided contact with other packs when possible, taking the long routes around established territories rather than risking confrontation. But word of our passage spread anyway. I could feel eyes watching from the shadows, hearing distant howls as packs marked our movement through their lands. The wild ones were traveling openly for the first time, and the pack world was taking notice. On the second night, we made camp in a clearing that Declan said was neutral ground, land claimed by no pack, safe for travelers under ancient law. We built fires, posted sentries, and tried to rest before the final leg of our journey. I sat by the fire with River, both of us too nervous to sleep. What do you think it'll be like? River asked softly, staring into the flames. The gathering? Terrifying, I admitted. We're going to be surrounded by alphas who see us as threats. Omegas who've been taught we're worthless. Entire packs built on the system we reject. But we'll have each other, River said. And we'll have Lucian Nightshade's protection. That counts for something. Does it? I looked at him. What if this is all a trap? What if Lucian is using us for some purpose we don't understand yet? The River was quiet for a moment. Then we deal with it. Together. Like we deal with everything else. His warm eyes met mine. You taught me that, when you first arrived, broken and bleeding but still fighting, you showed me what real courage looks like. Not the absence of fear, but moving forward despite it. I was terrified that night, I confessed. I know. We all knew. River smiled. But you chose to keep going anyway. You chose to learn, to grow, to become more than what they said you were. That's the lesson we're bringing to the gathering, Celeste. That wolves can choose. That we're more than our designations. That there's another way. Across the fire, Declan was in deep conversation with Natasha and Ember, planning strategy for the gathering. He looked up and caught my eye, offering a small smile that made my heart flutter despite my nerves. 3 months ago, I'd been running for my life. Now I was heading straight toward the world I'd fled, armed with nothing but the love of a pack who'd chosen me and the hope that our story might inspire change. It should have felt like suicide. Instead, it felt like destiny. We reached Nightshade territory on the 3rd day. The border was marked by massive stones carved with the pack insignia, silver wolves against black moons, each one easily twice my height. The scent markers here were powerful, recent, clearly maintained by regular patrols. This was one of the strongest packs in the Western Territories, and they wanted everyone to know it. A patrol was waiting for us at the border, 6 wolves in human form, armed but not aggressive. Their leader, a scarred beta with steel-gray eyes, stepped forward. "Alpha Declan of the Wild Ones?" he asked formally. "That's me," Declan replied. "I'm Marcus Ironfang, beta commander of the Northern Patrols. Alpha Lucian sent us to escort you to the estate." His eyes swept our group, lingering briefly on me before returning to Declan. "If you follow us, we'll take you to your quarters. The gathering begins tomorrow at sunset." We followed the patrol deeper into Nightshade territory, and with each mile, I felt more overwhelmed by the sheer scope of it. This wasn't like my father's lands, or even our hidden valley. This was a kingdom. The forests were pristine and well-maintained, game trails deliberately managed for optimal hunting. The pack villages we passed were prosperous. Well-built homes, wolves working in harmony, children playing without fear. Everything spoke of wealth, power, and organization on a scale I'd never imagined. And at the heart of it all stood the Nightshade estate. It was magnificent, a massive structure of dark stone and timber that seemed to grow organically from the mountainside. Towers reached toward the sky, windows gleamed in the afternoon sun, and banners bearing the pack insignia flew from every parapet. The grounds around it were meticulously maintained, formal gardens even in winter, training yards where warriors practiced, stables housing horses for those who preferred to travel on 4 legs of a different kind. This was what a powerful pack looked like. This was the world I'd rejected when I ran from Thornfield Manor. Impressive, isn't it? Matthias appeared beside us as we approached the main gates, his violet eyes amused. "My alpha doesn't do anything by half measures." "It's beautiful," I admitted. "And terrifying. The Nightshade pack had resources we could only dream of in our valley. If Lucian wanted to destroy us, we wouldn't stand a chance." As if reading my thoughts, Matthias smiled. "Don't worry. You're under guest right. While you're within these walls, you're as safe as any Nightshade wolf." He gestured toward the entrance. "Come. I'll show you to your quarters." The interior of the estate was even more overwhelming than the exterior. Soaring ceilings, walls decorated with tapestries and weapons from generations of warriors, floors of polished stone covered in thick furs. Wolves moved through the corridors with purpose, servants preparing for the gathering, warriors on patrol, officials handling the logistics of hosting hundreds of guests. And everywhere, the scent of power. Alpha dominance, so thick in the air it made my Omega instincts want to submit. Declan noticed me tensing and took my hand, squeezing gently. "I've got you," the gesture said. Matthias led us to the guest wing, a series of connected chambers that would house our entire group. "These are yours for the duration of the gathering," he explained. "Food will be brought 3 times daily, or you can eat in the main hall with the other guests. There are bathing chambers at the end of the corridor, and if you need anything, just ask any servant." He handed Declan a key. "The gathering officially begins tomorrow at sunset with a welcome feast. Until then, you're free to explore the estate and grounds, though I'd recommend staying together. Some of the arriving packs are less accepting of your lifestyle than others." "Understood," Declan said. "Thank you for your hospitality." Matthias inclined his head. "My alpha will want to meet with you privately before the feast. I'll send word when he's ready." He paused at the door. "Oh, and Celeste? You might want to prepare yourself. The Thornfield pack arrived this morning. They're housed in the south wing." My blood ran cold. My family was here, under the same roof, breathing the same air. After Matthias left, our pack claimed the various chambers and began settling in. Declan and I took one of the larger rooms, clearly meant for high-ranking guests, with a massive bed, a fireplace already burning, and windows overlooking the mountains. "This is bigger than my entire room at Thornfield Manor," I said, running my hand over the silk bedding. Everything was luxurious, expensive, designed to impress. "Are you okay?" Declan asked, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. "About your family being here?" "No," I admitted. "But I will be. I just need time to prepare myself." "We don't have to do this," Declan said quietly. We can leave right now. Go back to the valley. Forget the gathering. Forget Lucian's games. Forget all of it. I turned in his arms to face him. Do you want to leave? I want you to be safe and happy, he replied. Everything else is secondary. Then we stay. I cupped his face. Because running won't make me safe or happy in the long term. We need to do this, Declan. Need to prove we're not just surviving and hiding but thriving in the light. His golden eyes searched mine. You're sure? I'm terrified, I confessed. But yes, I'm sure. He kissed me then, slowly and deep, pouring all his love and support into the contact. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Together, he whispered. Always together, I agreed. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Natasha entered, her expression troubled. We have a problem, she said. Storm just got into a confrontation with some Riverside pack warriors in the corridor. They called us feral trash and said we didn't belong here. The Storm didn't react well. Declan's jaw tightened. Is anyone hurt?
No.
The Storm showed more restraint than I expected, just growled at them until they backed down. But it's a sign of what we're going to face here. Natasha's amber eyes were serious. Not every pack believes we should be recognized as legitimate. Some see our presence as an insult. Then we'll handle it with dignity, Declan said firmly. No matter what they say, no matter how they provoke us, we don't give them ammunition to claim we're violent or unstable. We're better than that. Tell that to Storm, Natasha muttered. The kid's wound tighter than a bowstring. I'll talk to him, I offered. He listens to me sometimes. I found Storm in one of the smaller chambers, pacing like a caged animal. His young face was flushed with anger, his hands clenched into fists. They have no right, he snarled when he saw me. No right to judge us. To act like we're beneath them. We're stronger than half these pampered pack wolves. Maybe, I said calmly. But strength isn't about who can hit hardest, Storm. It's about who can hold their ground without losing themselves. That's Omega talk, he spat, then immediately looked horrified. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. It's fine. I settled onto a chair, watching him pace. You're scared.
So am I.
So is everyone. We're in enemy territory, surrounded by wolves who want us to fail. It's terrifying. I'm not scared, Storm protested. I'm angry. Anger is just fear wearing a mask, I said gently. And there's no shame in being afraid, Storm. The shame would be in letting that fear control you. In giving these wolves exactly the reaction they want so they can point and say, see? The ferals are dangerous. They don't belong here. Storm stopped pacing, his young shoulders slumping. What if they're right? What if we don't belong here? We belong anywhere we choose to be, I said firmly. That's the whole point. We're not asking permission to exist, Storm. We're demanding recognition for what we've built. And tomorrow night, when we walk into that feast with our heads high, we're going to show every wolf in this estate what real strength looks like. The Storm was quiet for a moment. Then, how do you do it? Stay so calm when everything is terrifying. I'm not calm, I admitted. I'm just good at pretending. Years of practice being invisible taught me how to hide what I'm feeling. I stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. But here's what I've learned, Storm. You don't have to hide anymore. You can be scared and angry and confused and still be strong. The two aren't mutually exclusive. A small smile touched his lips. You sound like Declan. I learned from the best. That evening, a servant arrived with a message. Alpha Lucian requested our presence in his private study. Declan, Natasha, and I followed the servant through winding corridors to a tower room that overlooked the entire estate. The study was surprisingly intimate compared to the grandeur of the rest of the building. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk covered in papers and maps, comfortable chairs arranged around a fireplace. And standing at the window, silhouetted against the setting sun, was Lucian Nightshade. He turned as we entered, and I was struck again by how dangerous he looked. Tall and lean with midnight black hair, and those ice-blue eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore simple clothes, dark pants, and a white shirt, but moved with the kind of presence that didn't need ornamentation. Alpha Declan, he said, his voice smooth and cultured. Thank you for coming. And you must be Natasha. I've heard impressive things about your tactical skills. His ice blue eyes settled on me. Celeste. We met properly at last. Alpha Nightshade, I said, inclining my head respectfully. Thank you for your hospitality and protection. Please call me Lucian. We're about to become political allies, after all. Formality seems excessive. He gestured to the chairs. Sit. We have much to discuss before tomorrow's feast. Once we were settled, Lucian poured wine for everyone, an expensive vintage that probably cost more than anything we'd ever had in the valley. I suppose you're wondering why I've brought you here, Lucian began, settling into his own chair with predatory grace. Why I've extended protection and recognition to a pack that most alphas consider illegitimate. The thought had crossed our minds, Declan said dryly. Lucian smiled. I'm going to be honest with you. My reasons are partially altruistic and partially strategic. He took a sip of wine. The pack system is broken. We all know it. Forced matings, omega oppression, rigid hierarchies that crush individuality. It's unsustainable. Eventually, it will collapse under its own weight. You could argue for reform through official channels, Natasha pointed out. Why involve us? Because reform is slow, and people are suffering now, Lucian replied. Your pack represents proof that another way is possible. Wolves living freely, choosing their own paths, building something beautiful without coercion. His ice blue eyes were intense. I want to amplify that message. Show every alpha in the territories that change isn't just necessary, it's already happening. And your strategic reasons? Declan asked carefully. I'm young for an alpha and relatively new to power, Lucian said bluntly. The old guard sees me as a threat because I question traditions they hold sacred. By allying with you, I'm making a statement about what kind of alpha I intend to be. One who values progress over precedent. So we're useful to you, I said. Yes. Lucian didn't try to deny it. But I'm also useful to you. My protection legitimizes your pack. My endorsement opens doors that would otherwise remain closed. We can help each other, Celeste. I'm offering a partnership, not exploitation. What do you want in return? Declan asked. Specifically. Lucian leaned back in his chair. Tomorrow night, you'll be introduced to the gathered packs as honored guests under my protection. Some alphas will object, your father among them, Celeste. There will be challenges to your legitimacy, questions about your right to exist. He looked at each of us in turn. I want you to face those challenges with grace and strength. Show them what you've built. Tell your stories, all of you, not just Declan. Let them see that you're not monsters or threats, but wolves who chose freedom over captivity. You want us to be your propaganda, Natasha said flatly. I want you to be yourselves, Lucian corrected. Your existence is already propaganda for change. I'm just asking you to be visible about it. He set down his wine glass. In return, I'll support your pack politically. Encourage other alphas to recognize you. Help establish trade agreements and territorial protections. Give you everything you need to thrive, not just survive. It was a tempting offer. Dangerous, but tempting. And if we refuse? Declan asked. Then you're still my guests, still under my protection for the duration of the gathering, Lucian said simply. You'll return to your valley with my gratitude for accepting the invitation, and we'll go our separate ways. No strings, no obligations. He smiled slightly. Though I think you'll find that speaking up is more rewarding than staying silent. Declan looked at me and Natasha. We discussed this possibility, that Lucian would ask us to be the face of his reform movement. The question was whether we were willing to take on that role. Can we discuss it privately? I asked. Of course. Lucian stood. The feast begins at sunset tomorrow. I'll need your answer by then. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I believe in what you're building. Not because it's politically useful to me, but because it's right. The pack system has broken too many good wolves. It's time for that to end. After he left, the three of us sat in silence for a long moment. Well, Natasha said finally. That was enlightening.
He's using us, Declan said.
But he's being honest about it. That's something. And what he's offering in return would change everything for our pack, I added. Legitimacy, protection, resources. We'd never have to worry about being hunted or disbanded. At the cost of becoming political tools, Natasha countered. The moment we stand up tomorrow night and tell our stories, we become symbols. We lose control of our own narrative. Do we? I challenged myself. Or do we gain the power to shape the narrative for everyone who comes after us? Declan looked at me. What do you want to do, Celeste? This affects you more than anyone. Your family will be in that room. You'll have to face them publicly, probably defend your choice to leave. Are you ready for that? I thought about the girl I'd been, broken, invisible, convinced she was worthless. And I thought about the woman I'd become, strong, valued, loved. I'm ready, I said firmly. My father declared me dead because he couldn't accept that I chose freedom over his control. Tomorrow night, I'm going to stand in front of him and every other alpha who thinks Omega's our property, and I'm going to show them exactly how alive I am. Declan's smile was fierce and proud. Then we do this. Together. Together, Natasha agreed. We returned to our quarters to find the rest of our pack waiting anxiously for news. When Declan explained Lucian's offer and our decision to accept it, reactions were mixed. River was supportive. Storm was eager to prove himself. Ember was cautious but willing. Finn worried about the risks, but trusted our judgment. Tomorrow night, Declan addressed them all. We walk into that feast as equals. Not as rogues begging for acceptance, but as wolves who've built something worth recognizing. Some of you will be asked to share your stories. Why you left your birth packs, what you found with the wild ones. It won't be easy. It might be painful, but it's necessary. He looked around at the wolves who'd become our family. Anyone who's not comfortable with this can stay here in the quarters. No judgment, no pressure. But for those who are willing to stand with us, thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to let the world see who we really are. That night, lying in Declan's arms in our luxurious guest chamber, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow, I will face my family. Tomorrow, I would stand before the pack world and claim my right to exist freely. Tomorrow, everything will change. Nervous? Declan whispered in the darkness. Terrified, I admitted. But also ready. Is that strange? No. He pulled me closer. It's perfect. You're perfect. I love you, I said. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that. You saved me, Declan. In every way a person can be saved. You saved yourself, he corrected gently. I just gave you a safe place to land. We held each other as the moon rose over the Nightshade estate, casting silver light through our windows. Tomorrow would bring challenges we couldn't fully anticipate, but we'd face them together, the way we faced everything, as a pack, as a family, as wolves who refused to be broken. Chapter 11. Sunset painted the sky in shades of blood and gold. I stood before the mirror in our chamber, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. River had helped me prepare. My hair was braided in an intricate pattern that he'd learned from his mother, woven with silver thread that caught the light. I wore a dress that Lucian had sent me as a gift, deep midnight blue that brought out the gray of my eyes, simple but elegant, designed to make a statement without being ostentatious. I looked like someone who belonged at a gathering of alphas. I looked like someone who mattered. It was terrifying. You're beautiful, Declan said from behind me. He'd dressed in dark leather pants and a formal tunic marked with our pack's newly designed insignia, a silver crescent moon cradled by evergreen branches. Simple, but powerful. A symbol of wolves who chose to be free. I'm scared, I admitted, turning to face him. In a few hours, I'll be standing in a room full of alphas who think I'm worthless. My father will be there. My sister. My mother. Everyone who ever told me I was broken. Declan crossed to me and took my hands. And you'll show them exactly how wrong they were. His golden eyes were fierce. You're not that frightened girl anymore, Celeste. You're a survivor. A fighter. A wolf who chose freedom and built a life worth living. Let them see that. Let them choke on their own misconceptions. A knock at the door interrupted us. Natasha entered, dressed in fitted leather armor that somehow looked formal enough for a feast while remaining practical for fighting. Always prepared for anything. "It's time," she said. "Lucian sent an escort. The other packs are already gathering in the Great Hall." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. No more hiding. No more being invisible. Tonight I will be seen. Our entire delegation gathered in the corridor, 20 wolves dressed in our finest, faces set with determination despite the fear I could smell in the air. River wore simple healer's robes. Storm had reluctantly agreed to formal attire, though he looked ready to bolt at any moment. Ember, Finn, and the others stood proud, representing everything the Wild Ones had built together. "Remember," Declan addressed us all, his alpha voice carrying calm authority. "We're not here to beg for acceptance. We're here to claim what's already ours, the right to exist as we choose. Stay together. Support each other. And no matter what happens, hold your heads high. We have nothing to be ashamed of." Matthias appeared at the end of the corridor, his violet eyes gleaming with something that might have been excitement. "Ready? The gathering awaits." He led us through the estate's winding passages toward the Great Hall. With each step, I could hear the noise growing louder. Hundreds of voices, the clatter of dishes, the sound of wolves from across the territories coming together in neutral space. We reached the massive doors leading into the Great Hall, and Matthias paused. "When you enter, all eyes will turn to you," he said quietly. "Lucian has arranged for you to be announced formally. It's a sign of respect and recognition. Use it well." He smiled slightly. "And try not to let the staring bother you. They're not used to seeing rogues treated as equals." The doors swung open. The Great Hall was enormous, easily large enough to hold 500 wolves, with soaring ceilings supported by massive timber beams and walls decorated with banners representing every major pack in the Western Territories. Long tables laden with food stretched the length of the room, and wolves in their finest clothing filled every available space. And as we entered, every single one of them stopped and stared. Announcing Alpha Declan Ashford of the Wild Ones pack, a formal herald's voice rang out, and his honored delegation, guests of Alpha Lucian Nightshade. The silence that followed was deafening. I forced myself to keep walking, following Declan toward the high table where Lucian sat with the most powerful alphas in the territories. Every step felt like moving through water, awareness of all those eyes tracking our movement making my skin prickle. And then I saw them. The Thornfield delegation sat at a table to the left. My father, massive and imposing even seated, his steel-gray eyes burning with cold fury. My mother beside him, her face carefully neutral, but her hands clenched tight around her wine glass. And Isadora. My sister looked exactly as I remembered, beautiful and cruel, her emerald eyes narrowing as she saw me. For one horrible moment, I was that terrified girl again.
Small.
Worthless.
Broken.
Then Declan's hand found mine, squeezing gently. "I've got you." I lifted my chin and kept walking. Lucian stood as we approached the high table, his ice blue eyes scanning our delegation with approval. "Alpha Declan, Celeste, honored wolves of the Wild Ones, welcome." His voice carried through the hall, clear and commanding. "Please take your seats as my guests." He'd arranged places for us at the high table, a position of honor usually reserved for only the most powerful packs. The statement was clear. The Wild Ones were being recognized as equals. The hall erupted in murmurs. Shock, outrage, curiosity, all of it washing over us in waves. As we took our seats, I caught my father's expression. Pure, undisguised hatred. He declared me dead, tried to move on, and now here I was, alive, thriving, sitting in a position of honor while he watched from below. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt sad. The feast began with traditional formalities, Lucian welcoming the gathered packs, acknowledging the alphas present, outlining the schedule for the gathering. His speech was diplomatic and careful, giving no hint of the revolutionary agenda he'd shared with us privately. Food was served, roasted meats, fresh breads, winter vegetables preserved in honey, wine that probably cost more per bottle than our entire pack spent in a month. It was a display of wealth and power designed to impress and intimidate. I could barely eat, too aware of the constant stares, the whispered conversations, the way other wolves looked at us like we were exotic animals on display. Halfway through the meal, an alpha from a pack I didn't recognize stood. He was older, with silver hair, and the kind of presence that spoke of decades of leadership. "Alpha Nightshade," he called out, his voice carrying through the hall. "I must object to this irregularity. The Wild Ones are not a recognized pack. They're rogues, outcasts who've rejected pack law. Their presence here dishonors this gathering." Several other alphas murmured agreement. Lucian set down his wine glass slowly, his ice-blue eyes cold. "Alpha Garrett of Shadowmere, your objection is noted. However, the Wild Ones pack has existed for 8 years. They maintain territory, govern themselves according to their own laws, and have never broken the peace with neighboring packs. By what standard are they not legitimate? They take in fugitives," another alpha called out. "Wolves who've broken contracts, abandoned obligations. They undermine pack authority. They offer sanctuary to wolves fleeing abuse," Lucian corrected smoothly. "There's a difference." He looked around the hall. "How many of you have forced omegas into unwanted matings? How many have exiled pack members for refusing to submit to arbitrary dominance challenges? How many have punished wolves for simply wanting to choose their own paths?" Uncomfortable silence fell. "The Wild Ones exist because our system has failed," Lucian continued. "They're a symptom of a larger problem, pack law that treats wolves as property rather than people. You can dismiss them as rogues, or you can listen to what their existence is telling you. That change is necessary. That the old ways are dying." "This is outrageous." My father's voice cut through the hall like a blade. He stood, his massive frame radiating alpha dominance. "You speak of failed systems, Nightshade, but you ignore the chaos that comes from abandoning structure. Wolves need hierarchy. They need guidance. Without it, we're no better than animals." "We are animals, Victor," Lucian replied calmly. "The question is whether we're animals who think, or animals who simply follow." My father's face darkened. "You defend the rogues who stole my daughter, who corrupted her into abandoning her duties to her pack and family. I defend a woman who chose freedom over captivity," Lucian countered. He looked at me. "Perhaps we should hear from her directly. Celeste, would you like to address the gathering?" Every eye in the hall turned to me. My mouth went dry. This was it, the moment Lucian had asked for. The chance to tell my story, to show these alphas that omegas deserved agency. I could refuse, could stay silent and let others speak for me. Or I could finally use my voice. I stood slowly, my legs trembling but holding steady. Declan's hand squeezed mine once before I released it. "My name is Celeste," I began, my voice quieter than I wanted but gaining strength with each word. "I was born into the Thornfield pack as an omega. From my first breath, I was taught that my value was determined by my usefulness to others, that my purpose was to serve the pack through strategic mating, that wanting more than that was selfish and wrong." I looked directly at my father. When I experienced my first heat, I was sold to Shadowmere pack without my consent. Sold to mate a stranger I'd never met, to produce heirs for a pack that saw me as nothing more than a vessel. When I objected, I was told I should be grateful, that this was my duty, that refusal would be unforgivable. My hands clenched into fists. So I ran. I fled into the wilderness expecting to die because death seemed preferable to a life of captivity. And I would have died if Declan Ashford hadn't found me and offered something I'd never known before: choice. The freedom to decide my own path. The chance to be valued for who I am, not what I can provide. Around the hall, I could see omegas watching me with wide eyes. Some looked shocked. Others looked hungry, like they were drinking every word. "The Wild Ones didn't steal me," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "They saved me. They taught me that my designation doesn't define my worth, that I can be strong and capable and valuable beyond my ability to produce heirs. They gave me a family that chose me instead of tolerating me. I turned to address the entire hall. Every wolf in the Wild Ones pack has a story like mine. Wolves who were abused, rejected, forced into situations they didn't consent to. We're not rogues or rebels, we're survivors. And our existence proves that there's another way. That packs can be built on choice instead of coercion, on love instead of obligation. This is propaganda, an alpha shouted. Emotional manipulation designed to undermine pack authority. No, River stood suddenly, his gentle voice somehow carrying through the hall. This is true. I left my birth pack after my alpha claimed me against my will. When I fought back, I was beaten and starved until I learned submission. The Wild Ones took me in and taught me that surviving isn't the same as living, that I deserve dignity and choice. Storm stood next. I was exiled from my pack for showing inappropriate emotions. My alpha said a young beta should be aggressive and dominant, not sensitive or thoughtful. The Wild Ones accepted me exactly as I am. One by one, members of our delegation stood and shared their stories. Ember, who'd been forced into a mating with her sister's widower. Sage, who'd refused an arranged marriage and been beaten for her defiance. Finn, who'd been rejected by his birth pack for being too weak to fight. Each story was different, but the theme was the same. The pack system had broken them, and the Wild Ones had offered healing. The hall was silent now, wolves listening with expressions ranging from horror to discomfort to dawning understanding. Finally, Declan stood. I founded the Wild Ones because I saw what the pack system does to wolves who don't fit the mold, he said, his alpha voice carrying absolute authority. It breaks them. Discard them. Tell them they're worthless if they can't conform to arbitrary standards. I refuse to accept that. I refuse to believe that strength only comes through dominance, that omegas only have value through breeding, that wolves can't choose their own paths. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of alpha after alpha. You can dismiss us as rogues if you want. You can pretend we're an aberration, a problem to be solved. But we're not going away. Every time you force a wolf into an unwanted mating, every time you exile someone for being different, every time you choose tradition over compassion, you create more of us. And eventually, there will be more Wild Ones than pack wolves, because freedom is worth more than security built on oppression. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, impossibly, an omega from one of the other packs stood. She was young, maybe 16, with tear-stained cheeks. Is it true? She asked, her voice trembling. What omegas can I choose? That we don't have to accept whatever mating our alphas arrange. Yes, I said firmly. You have the right to choose. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. That's enough. The girl's alpha, an older male with cruel eyes, grabbed her arm roughly. Sit down and be silent. Don't touch her. Lucian's voice was ice. She asked a legitimate question. She's my omega, the alpha snarled. I'll discipline her however I see fit. Actually, Lucian stood, his presence filling the hall like a physical force. Under my roof, you'll treat all wolves with respect. Omega, beta, or alpha, it doesn't matter. Guest right extends to everyone, and I won't tolerate abuse in my territory. The alpha's face went purple with rage, but he released the girl's arm. She sank back into her seat, but her eyes remained on me, hungry and hopeful. How many others were watching? How many omegas in this hall were hearing for the first time that they had options beyond submission? My father stood abruptly. This is an outrage. You're encouraging rebellion, undermining centuries of tradition. I'm encouraging evolution. Lucian interrupted coldly. The world is changing, Victor. You can change with it, or you can be left behind. Your choice. My daughter is not your daughter anymore, I said, my voice ringing clear through the hall. You declared me dead. You erased me from your pack, from your family, from your history. You have no claim on me, Alpha Thornfield. I am a Wild Ones pack now. I am Declan's mate. And I am finally, truly free. My father's face contorted with rage, so profound I thought he might shift right there in the hall. But Lucian's presence kept him in check, pack law forcing him to contain his fury. This gathering is meant to celebrate peace and cooperation between packs, Lucian said, his voice carrying authority that even my father couldn't challenge. Not to relitigate personal grievances. Alpha Thornfield, I suggest you remember where you are. It was a warning and a threat wrapped in diplomatic language. My father sat slowly, his steel-gray eyes promising retribution even as his mouth stayed silent. The feast continued, but the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. Omegas throughout the hall were whispering to each other, casting glances at our table. Some alphas looked furious, others thoughtful, a few even approving. We'd done it. We'd told our stories. Planted seeds of change. Whether those seeds would grow or be crushed remained to be seen. As the formal meal ended and wolves began mingling, Lucian approached our table. Well done, he said quietly. You exceeded every expectation. His ice-blue eyes held something like respect. The gathering continues for 3 more days. Trade negotiations, diplomatic meetings, entertainment. Use that time to talk to other wolves. Share your vision. Build alliances. And what do you get out of this? Declan asked. The satisfaction of watching the old guard squirm. Lucian replied with a slight smile. And a future where wolves like us, who value progress over tradition, have the support and allies we need to actually change things. He walked away before we could respond, leaving us to navigate the social minefield of pack politics. Over the next hour, we were approached by various wolves. Some were curious, asking genuine questions about how the wild ones functioned. Others were hostile, thinly veiled threats wrapped in polite conversation. A few Omegas approached nervously, asking if what I'd said was true, that they really could choose. Each time, I told them yes. You have the right to choose. You're worth more than what others say you are. And I watched hope bloom in their eyes like flowers in spring. I was speaking with a young Omega from the Riverside pack when I felt eyes on my back. I turned to find Isadora watching me from across the hall, her emerald eyes cold with calculation. She approached slowly, her movements deliberate and graceful. Everything about her screamed wealth and power. The expensive dress, the perfect hair, the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Sister, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. How quaint to see you here. Playing at being important. Isadora. I kept my voice neutral. You're looking well. Of course I am. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Unlike you, I haven't been living in a cave with rogues. Her gaze raked over me. Though I must admit, the dress is lovely. Did your alpha buy it for you? Or did you steal it? It was a gift, I said calmly. From Alpha Nightshade. That made her pause, jealousy flickering across her perfect features. Lucian Nightshade gave you a dress? Why would he? Understanding dawned. Oh. You're his political tool. How fitting. You escape being sold to one alpha only to be used by another. That's not what this is, I said. Isn't it? Isadora leaned closer. You think you're free, Celeste? You think running to the wilderness and finding some rogue alpha who claims to love you makes you special? Her voice dropped to a vicious whisper. You're still just a desperate Omega who'll take whatever scrap she's thrown. The only difference is now you're deluding yourself into calling it a choice. Her words hit deeper than I wanted to admit. Because wasn't there truth in them? Wasn't I being used by Lucian, even if he was honest about it? You're wrong. Declan's voice cut through my doubts. He'd appeared beside me, his golden eyes hard as he looked at Isadora. Celeste chose to leave a pack that devalued her. Chose to build a life with wolves who actually care about her well-being. Chose to stand here tonight and tell her the truth despite knowing people like you would try to tear her down. He stepped closer to Isadora, his alpha presence making her instinctively step back. The only one who's desperate here is you. Desperate to maintain a system that gives you power over others because you're terrified of what you'd be without it. Isadora's face flushed with anger. How dare you? He dares because he's right. My mother's voice made us all turn. Luna Margot Thornfield stood a few feet away, her expression unreadable. Isadora, go join your father. I need to speak with Celeste privately. But mother.
Now.
Isadora shot me a venomous look before stalking away. My mother and I faced each other across the crowded hall. I hadn't spoken to her since the night I fled. Hadn't heard her voice, seen her face, felt the weight of her disappointment. You look well, she said finally. Healthier than I've ever seen you. I didn't know what to say to that. Your father is furious, she continued. He considers your presence here a personal insult. He'll never forgive you for this public humiliation. I don't need his forgiveness, I said quietly. I needed his love, and he never had that to give. Something flickered in my mother's eyes. Pain? Regret? You don't understand the pressures he was under. The expectations. Don't, I interrupted. Don't make excuses for him. For either of you. You stood by while he sold me like property. You locked me in my room when I objected. You attended my memorial service and went back to your lives like I never existed. My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay calm. You were my mother. You were supposed to protect me. I was Luna of the Thornfield pack, she said, her voice hollow. My duty was to the pack, not to. She stopped, seeming to realize what she was about to say. Not to me, I finished. Your defective Omega daughter wasn't worth protecting.
I know.
I've always known. My mother was silent for a long moment. Then, you're right. I failed you. I chose pack duty over motherhood, and you paid the price. She looked away. For what it's worth, I'm glad you survived. Glad you found somewhere that values you, even if it means I'll never see you again. You declared me dead, I said. You made that choice, not me. I know. She met my eyes again. But sometimes doing the wrong thing is the only way to let someone be free. Your father would have hunted you forever if we hadn't held that memorial. This way, you're dead to the pack. Legally, officially dead. Which means you're free to build whatever life you want without us coming after you. I stared at her, trying to understand. You did that for me? I did it because I couldn't protect you when you were with us, she said quietly. So, I protected you the only way I could, by cutting you loose completely. A bitter smile touched her lips. Not much of a mother's love, is it? But that's all I have to give. She turned and walked away before I could respond, disappearing into the crowd of pack wolves. I stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. My mother, cold, distant, disappointment incarnate, had essentially given me her blessing to be free, even if it meant never seeing her again. It wasn't love. Not really. But it was something. A small, twisted form of caring wrapped in duty and tradition. Are you all right? Declan asked gently. I don't know, I admitted. I think that was closure? Maybe. He pulled me close, and I leaned into his strength. Around us, the gathering continued. Hundreds of wolves navigating pack politics and social hierarchies, building alliances and nursing grudges. But in that moment, wrapped in Declan's arms, I felt only peace. I'd faced my family, told my truth, claimed my right to exist freely, and I'd survived. Chapter 12. The second day of the winter gathering dawned cold and clear. I woke up wrapped in Declan's arms, the events of the previous night still swirling through my mind. We'd done it, stood before the pack world, and claimed our right to exist. The reactions had been mixed, but we'd made an impact. I could feel it in the way other wolves looked at us now, the whispered conversations that followed us through the corridors. Change was coming. Slowly, but coming. Morning. Declan murmured against my hair. How are you feeling? Like I ran a marathon and fought a bear, I admitted. But also proud? Is that strange? Not at all. He kissed my temple. You were magnificent last night. Every word, every moment, you showed them exactly who you are. A knock at the door interrupted us. Natasha entered without waiting for permission, her amber eyes troubled. We have a problem, she said. A big one. My stomach dropped. What now? Alpha Council has called an emergency session, Natasha replied. They're demanding a formal hearing about the Wild One's legitimacy. This morning. In the main council chamber. Declan sat up sharply. The Alpha Council? Here. Apparently several of the older alphas petitioned them last night after the feast, Natasha explained. They're claiming we're a threat to pack stability and demanding we be disbanded immediately. The Alpha Council was the highest governing body in the werewolf world, 7 of the oldest, most powerful alphas from across all the territories, elected to serve for life. Their word was law, superseding individual pack authority. If they ruled against us, every pack in the territories would be obligated to hunt us down. This was the real fight. Everything else had been preparation. When? Declan asked, already moving to dress. 2 hours. Lucian managed to delay them that long, but no longer. Natasha's expression was grim. Declan, this is bad. The council doesn't meet lightly. If they're here, if they're calling a formal hearing, they're serious about shutting us down. Then we'll have to convince them otherwise, Declan said firmly. He looked at me.
Get dressed.
Formal attire. We need to look like we belong in that council chamber. An hour later, our entire delegation gathered in the corridor outside the council chamber. We'd all dressed in our finest, presenting a unified front of wolves who deserved to be taken seriously. River had plaited my hair again, weaving in silver thread that matched the crescent moon on Declan's tunic. I wore the blue dress from last night, armor disguised as elegance. Remember, Declan addressed our group quietly. We're not on trial here. They are. The pack system that broke us, that forced us to flee, that treats wolves like property, that's what should be judged. Stay strong. Stay united. And trust that our truth is powerful enough to change minds. The massive doors to the council chamber swung open. The room was smaller than I'd expected, circular, with 7 high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle at one end. Each chair bore the insignia of a different territorial region, representing the breadth of werewolf society. And in those chairs sat the 7 council alphas, ancient, powerful wolves whose combined age probably exceeded 500 years. At the center sat High Alpha Marcus, the council's elected leader. He was easily in his 80s, with pure white hair and eyes that had witnessed generations of wolves rise and fall. His presence alone made my Omega instincts want to submit. The other 6 council members were equally imposing. Alpha Helena of the Western Territories, the same Alpha who'd objected at the feast. Alpha Thomas of the Mountain Territories, elderly but sharp-eyed. Alpha Dominic of the Northern Reaches, and my heart stuttered when I realized this was Declan's father, the Alpha who disowned him years ago. This was going to be worse than I thought. Flanking the council were dozens of pack alphas who'd come to witness the proceedings. My father stood among them, his steel-gray eyes burning with satisfaction. He'd orchestrated this. Called in favors, pressured the council, ensured we'd face judgment. Lucian stood off to one side, his ice-blue eyes unreadable. He'd done what he could, but even his power had limits against the council. Alpha Declan Ashford, High Alpha Marcus's voice rang through the chamber. You stand accused of undermining pack authority, harboring fugitives, and establishing an illegitimate pack in violation of territorial law. How do you plead? Not guilty, Declan said clearly. On all counts. The evidence suggests otherwise, Alpha Helena interjected. You've taken in wolves who broke formal contracts, abandoned their pack obligations, and rejected the natural order. You've created a sanctuary for dissent and rebellion. I've created a sanctuary for wolves who were failed by their packs, Declan corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Alpha Thomas leaned forward. By what authority do you declare pack decisions failures? By what right do you supersede the judgment of established alphas? By the right of basic decency, Declan replied. When a pack forces unwanted matings, when they exile wolves for being different, when they treat omegas as property, that's not leadership. That's tyranny. And wolves have the right to flee tyranny. Bold words from a wolf who abandoned his own pack. Alpha Dominic spoke for the first time, his voice cold. You refused to fulfill your duties as an alpha, claimed weakness as virtue, and fled into the wilderness rather than face your responsibilities. Now you've built a pack of similar failures and expect us to legitimize it. I watched Declan's jaw tighten. Hearing his own father dismiss him so publicly had to hurt, even after years of separation. I didn't abandon my pack, Declan said quietly. I refused to kill a friend to prove my dominance. I chose conscience over ambition. And yes, I built a pack of wolves who made similar choices, wolves who valued morality over tradition. If that makes us failures in your eyes, then I'll wear that label proudly. This is exactly the problem, another council member said, a female alpha with silver-streaked hair. You encourage wolves to prioritize individual desires over pack needs. That's a recipe for chaos. No, I said, stepping forward before I could stop myself. That's a recipe for freedom. All eyes turned to me. High Alpha Marcus's ancient gaze settled on my face. The Omega, he said. Celeste Thornfield, daughter of Alpha Victor. Or should I say, former daughter? You severed ties with your birth pack, broke a formal mating contract, and fled into unclaimed territory. Explain yourself. My heart was hammered, but I forced myself to speak clearly. I fled because the alternative was a lifetime of captivity. My father sold me to a stranger without my consent. When I objected, I was told my consent wasn't required, that my role as an Omega meant I had no right to choose my own path. Your role as Omega is to serve the pack, Alpha Helena said sharply. Through strategic mating, through producing strong pups, through supporting pack stability. That's not captivity, that's duty. It's both, I replied. Duty enforced without consent is captivity. And I refuse to accept that my biology determines my entire life. I'm more than a womb, more than a political tool. I'm a person who deserves agency. Omega agency disrupts pack hierarchy, another council member argued. If every Omega could refuse matings, how would we maintain alliances? How would we ensure strong bloodlines? By treating Omegas as partners instead of property, River said, standing beside me. By building alliances of mutual respect instead of force bonds. By understanding that strong pups come from wanted matings, not coerced ones. And who are you to lecture the council on pack management? Alpha Thomas demanded. I'm an Omega who was claimed against my will, River said calmly. Who was beaten when I resisted? Who fled my birth pack because staying meant accepting rape disguised as duty? His gentle voice carried steel underneath. I'm qualified to speak because I've lived the reality your traditions create. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some alphas looked uncomfortable. Others are angry. A few, very few, seemed thoughtful. These are emotional appeals, not logical arguments, Alpha Helena said dismissively. Individual hardships don't justify dismantling a system that has served werewolf society for millennia. Served who? Natasha challenged. Because from where I'm standing, the pack system serves alphas beautifully. You get power, control, wolves who can't refuse your commands. But it fails everyone else. Betas who want to lead. Omegas who want choice. Wolves who don't fit your narrow definitions of acceptable. You speak of failure, High Alpha Marcus said, his ancient voice carrying weight. Yet the pack system has maintained order, prevented wars, allowed our kind to thrive for generations. What you call tyranny, we call structure. What you call captivity, we call security. Security for whom? Declan asked. Not for the Omega being sold into unwanted matings. Not for the Beta exiled for questioning Alpha authority. Not for the young wolves beaten into submission until they learned to accept abuse as normal. He looked directly at his father. You say I abandoned my pack. I say I refuse to perpetuate a cycle of violence. And I've spent 8 years proving there's another way. A way that attracts malcontents and rebels, Alpha Dominic replied coldly. Your pack is a haven for wolves who can't function in proper society. Our pack is a haven for wolves who refuse to accept that cruelty is inevitable, Declan corrected. We function just fine, better than fine. We hunt, we heal, we build, we thrive. The only difference is we do it through choice instead of coercion. And when do those choices conflict? Alpha Thomas challenged. When an Omega refuses a mating that would benefit the pack. When a Beta challenges Alpha authority. Your system of choice leads to chaos. Our system of choice leads to happiness, I said. Every wolf in the wild ones chose to be there. Choose to contribute, to support each other, to build something together. There's no chaos, just cooperation. Just family. Family. My father's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. He'd been silent until now, but his rage had clearly reached a breaking point. You dare speak of family after abandoning yours? After spitting on everything we gave you? You gave me nothing but pain, I replied, meeting his steel-gray eyes directly. You told me I was worthless. You locked me in my room. You sold me like livestock. That's not family, that's ownership. And I refuse to be owned. You ungrateful. Enough, High Alpha Marcus interrupted. This is not the place for personal grievances. He looked at Declan. Alpha Ashford, the council must make a decision. We can legitimize your pack, recognizing you as an independent entity with full territorial rights. Or we can declare you rogue and order your disbandment. Make your final argument. Why should we choose legitimization? This was it. Everything came down to this moment. Declan stood tall, his golden eyes sweeping the council. You should legitimize us, because we represent the future. The pack system is changing whether you acknowledge it or not. Wolves are questioning traditions that no longer serve them. Omegas are refusing unwanted matings. Betas are challenging unjust authority. Young alphas are choosing conscience over conquest. He gestured to our delegation. We're not an aberration. We're the beginning of an evolution. And you have a choice. Evolve with us, or be left behind clinging to traditions that break more wolves than they protect. That sounds like a threat, Alpha Helena said coldly. It's an observation, Declan replied. Change is coming. The only question is whether you'll guide that change or fight it until it overwhelms you. Silence fell over the chamber. The council members looked at each other, communicating in that wordless way ancient alphas had. Finally, High Alpha Marcus spoke. The council will deliberate. You will wait outside while we reach our decision. We filed out of the chamber, the massive doors closing behind us with an ominous finality. In the corridor, our delegation gathered in tight, anxious clusters. No one spoke. What was there to say? We'd made our case. Now our fate rested in the hands of 7 alphas who'd built their power on the very system we challenged. Lucian approached, his ice-blue eyes unreadable. You did well there. Better than I expected. Will it be enough? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. The council is traditional, set in their ways. Convincing them to legitimize a pack that fundamentally challenges their authority, that's asking them to undermine their own power. He paused. But stranger things have happened, and you gave them something to think about. What happens if they rule against us? Declan asked quietly. Then you run, Lucian said bluntly. Tonight. I'll provide supplies, safe passage through my territory, and time to get a head start before the enforcement order goes out. You won't be safe in the Western Territories anymore, but there are other regions, other places you could rebuild. And abandon everyone who believes in what we're doing? I challenged myself. Every Omega who heard us last night and found hope. Better to survive and inspire from a distance than die and inspire no one, Lucian replied. I'm offering you a way out, Celeste. Whether you take it is up to you. Before I could respond, the council chamber doors opened. The council has reached a decision, a herald announced. All parties may enter. We filed back into the chamber, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was it. Legitimization or extinction. High Alpha Marcus stood, his ancient face grave. The council has deliberated on the matter of the Wild Ones pack, he began. We have heard arguments both for and against their legitimization. We have considered the implications of our decision on pack society as a whole. He paused, and the silence stretched unbearably. By a vote of 4-3, the council has decided to grant provisional legitimacy to the Wild Ones pack. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. I grabbed Declan's hand, hardly daring to believe what I'd heard. Provisional? Declan asked. Yes, High Alpha Marcus continued. You will be recognized as an independent pack with territorial rights. However, this recognition comes with conditions. His ancient eyes were stern. You will submit to annual reviews by the council. You will maintain peaceful relations with neighboring packs. You will not actively recruit wolves from other packs, though you may continue to offer sanctuary to wolves who seek you out. And you will allow council observers to visit your territory periodically to ensure you're not engaging in activities that threaten pack stability. We accept those terms, Declan said immediately. Furthermore, Marcus continued, the council is establishing a new legal framework regarding Omega rights. Effective immediately, all Omegas must consent to mating bonds. Forced matings are declared illegal. Omegas who wish to leave abusive pack situations may petition the council for transfer without being branded rogue. Gasps echoed through the chamber. This was revolutionary. This was everything we'd fought for. This is outrageous, my father roared. You're destroying pack authority based on the whining of a few malcontents. We're evolving pack law to reflect changing values. Hi, Alpha Marcus replied firmly. The vote was narrow, Alpha Thornfield, but it was decisive. The old ways are no longer sustainable. We either adapt or we fracture. He looked around the chamber. This decision is final and binding. Any pack that violates the new Omega protections will face council sanctions. He turned back to Declan. Alpha Ashford, you and your pack have earned your legitimacy. Use it wisely. Prove that choice and freedom can coexist with order and stability. The council will be watching. We will, Declan promised. As the council adjourned and wolves began filing out of the chamber, I stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. We'd won. Not just for ourselves, but for every Omega in the territories. We'd changed pack law. Changed the system that had broken so many. Celeste, a voice made me turn. Alpha Dominic, Declan's father, stood a few feet away. His expression was complicated, layered with emotions I couldn't read. You have something to say to me? Declan asked, his voice carefully neutral. I voted for your legitimization, Dominic said quietly. I was one of the four. Declan's eyes widened in shock. You what? I was wrong, Dominic continued, his voice rough. 8 years ago, I told you that refusing to kill for power made you weak. That choosing conscience over ambition was failure. He looked away. I've watched you build something remarkable. Something that proves strength comes in many forms. And I realized I'd failed you far more than you ever failed me. Father, Declan started. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Dominic interrupted. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I see what you've accomplished. I see what I threw away when I disowned you. A bitter smile touched his lips. You've become the alpha I never had the courage to be. One who values his wolves over his pride. He turned and walked away before Declan could respond, disappearing into the crowd of departing alphas. Declan stood silent, processing his father's words. Are you okay? I asked softly. I don't know, he admitted. I spent 8 years believing my father would never see past tradition. Never understand why I left. And now.
He shook his head.
Now he's the reason we have legitimacy. One of the votes that changed everything. Maybe people can change, I said. Maybe that's the real lesson here. That even ancient, traditional alphas can evolve when they're forced to see the truth. Declan pulled me close. We did it. Moon's mercy, Celeste, we actually did it. Around us, our pack was celebrating. Hugging, crying, laughing with relief and joy. We'd faced the highest authority in the werewolf world and emerged not just victorious, but with the power to change pack law for every Omega in the territories. Lucian approached, a rare genuine smile on his face. Congratulations, Alpha Ashford. You've just made history. We couldn't have done it without your support, Declan said. Perhaps, Lucian allowed. But the words that changed my mind were yours. The courage to stand before the council and demand recognition. That was all you. He looked at me. Both of you. As the chamber emptied and our pack made plans to celebrate, I caught one last glimpse of my father. He stood alone in a corner, his face twisted with impotent rage. He'd tried to destroy me, to use the council to eliminate the pack that had given me sanctuary. Instead, he'd helped create the very change he feared. Sometimes justice looked like victory. Sometimes it looked like watching the people who hurt you lose the power to hurt anyone else. I turned away from him and back to my pack. My family, the wolves who'd chosen me and whom I'd chosen in return. We'd won more than legitimacy today. We'd won the right to exist freely. The right to build a future where choice mattered more than tradition. The right to prove that love and respect could be stronger than fear and coercion. And that was worth everything we'd endured to get here. 1 year later, spring came to the valley like a promise kept. I stood on the familiar rock outcropping where Declan and I had shared so many important moments, watching the sun rise over mountains that had witnessed our transformation. The valley below was alive with activity, wolves moving through the morning routines that had become our rhythm, our life, our home. But it was different now. Bigger, stronger, changed in ways we'd never imagined a year ago. Lost in thought. Declan's arms wrapped around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. Even after a year as his mate, the contact still sent warm tingles through my body. Just thinking about how much has changed, I said, leaning back into his warmth. A year ago, we were standing in that council chamber, fighting for our right to exist. Now look at us. The Wild Ones pack had grown exponentially. What had been 70 wolves was now nearly 200. Word had spread about the council's decision, about Omega protections, about a pack built on choice instead of coercion, about a place where wolves could be free. And they came. From every corner of the Western Territories, wolves seeking sanctuary found their way to our valley. We'd had to expand. The original den now had 3 additional wings carved into the mountainside. We'd established satellite camps in the surrounding forest to accommodate everyone. We'd created formal structures, healing chambers run by River and his apprentices, training grounds where Natasha taught combat to anyone who wanted to learn, gardens where we cultivated herbs and food, even a small school where young wolves learned reading, writing, and pack history that included perspectives beyond alpha dominance. The new arrivals settled in well, Declan said. That Omega family from Riverside Pack. The mother was so relieved to be here. She said her old alpha had been pressuring her to accept a mating with his beta, and she'd been terrified of refusing until she heard about the new council laws. How many is that this month? I asked. 15 new wolves. Mostly Omegas, but a few betas and even 2 young alphas who didn't want to participate in their pack's dominance challenges. Declan's voice held satisfaction. We're becoming exactly what we hoped, a real alternative to the traditional pack system. A howl echoed from the valley below, the signal that breakfast was ready. We made our way down the familiar path, my hand secure in Declan's, our bond humming with contentment. The main cavern had been transformed. What was once a simple gathering space was now a true great hall, with long tables, permanent cooking fires, storage chambers for our growing supplies. Wolves filled every available space, eating, talking, laughing, living without fear. I spotted the River immediately. He was at his usual table, surrounded by young wolves eager to learn healing arts. Over the past year, he developed a comprehensive training program, and we now had a dozen competent healers in the pack. His gentle teaching style made even the most complex remedies seem accessible. Storm sat nearby, no longer the angry, defensive young beta who'd wanted to fight the world. He'd found purpose in our pack, becoming one of Natasha's most trusted warriors and helping train new arrivals in defensive combat. He'd even started courting a young Omega who'd arrived 3 months ago, a sweet wolf named Willow who shared his passion for protection. Ember and Finn were managing the morning meal distribution, their efficiency born of months of practice feeding a pack that seemed to grow every week. They'd become the backbone of our daily operations, handling logistics that allowed the rest of us to focus on expansion and integration. And there, sitting at the high table with Natasha, going over patrol schedules, was someone I'd never expected to see in our valley. Alpha Dominic of Shadow Pine Pack. After the council's decision, Declan's father had approached us with a proposal, a formal alliance between Shadow Pine and the Wild Ones. Not absorption or dominance, but genuine partnership, shared resources, mutual protection, cultural exchange. It had been awkward at first, years of hurt feelings and betrayal creating tension. But slowly, carefully, Declan and his father had begun rebuilding their relationship. Dominic visited the valley once a month now, sometimes bringing wolves from his pack who were curious about our way of life. He'd even started implementing some of our practices in Shadow Pine, allowing wolves more choice in their matings, creating councils where all designations had equal voice, reducing the emphasis on dominance challenges. Change was spreading. Slowly but spreading. Morning. Lucian Nightshade's voice made me turn. The powerful alpha had become a regular visitor to our valley, his friendship with Declan deepening over the months. He sat down beside us, accepting a plate of food with a nod of thanks to Ember. "How's the expansion project coming?" "Better than expected," Declan replied. "The new western wing should be complete in another 2 weeks. That'll give us capacity for another 50 wolves." "You'll need it," Lucian said. "I've been hearing whispers from the southern territories. Several packs down there are dealing with Omega rebellions, wolves refusing unwanted matings, citing the council's new laws. Some of them will likely head north looking for sanctuary." "We'll be ready," I said. And we would be. We'd learned so much over the past year about integrating new wolves, about building community from diversity, about creating structures that supported freedom instead of constraining it. Oh, before I forget, Lucian pulled a letter from his jacket. "This arrived at my estate yesterday. It's addressed to you, Celeste." I took the letter, recognizing the handwriting immediately. My mother's elegant script. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Declan squeezed my shoulder supportively. "Celeste, I hope this letter finds you well. I've been following news of the Wild Ones pack with interest. The stories I hear of growth, prosperity, wolves finding happiness and purpose, they fill me with something I didn't expect. Pride. Your father remains unchanged. He's forbidden anyone in the Thornfield pack from speaking your name, from acknowledging your existence. But I can't maintain that fiction anymore. You're alive. You're thriving. You've accomplished something remarkable. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see what you've built. I understand now that letting you go, declaring you dead, was the only gift I could give you. The freedom to become who you were always meant to be. Isadora is being courted by an alpha from the Eastern Coastal Pack. It's a good match, politically advantageous. She seems content, though I sometimes wonder if she envies your freedom as much as she claims to despise it. I don't know if we'll ever see each other again. Perhaps that's for the best. But I wanted you to know that somewhere in the Thornfield territory, a mother watches the moon and thinks of her daughter, and wishes her nothing but happiness. Be well, Celeste. Be free. Mother. I read the letter twice, tears blurring the words. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was an acknowledgement, recognition. A mother finally seeing her daughter as something more than a disappointment. It was enough. Are you okay? Declan asked softly. Yeah, I said, folding the letter carefully. I think I am. After breakfast, I made my rounds through the valley. This had become my routine over the past year, checking in with new arrivals, helping where I was needed, making sure everyone felt welcome and valued. I found a young Omega named Jasmine sitting alone near the river, her expression troubled. She'd arrived 2 days ago from the Mountain Ridge Pack, fleeing an arranged mating with an alpha 3 times her age. Morning, I said, settling beside her on the rocks. How are you adjusting? It's overwhelming, Jasmine admitted. Everyone's so happy here. So free. I keep waiting for someone to tell me it's not real, that there's a catch. I smiled, remembering my own disbelief when I'd first arrived. There's no catch. Just wolves who've chosen to live differently, who've decided that kindness matters more than hierarchy. But how do you make it work? Jasmine asked desperately. How do you maintain order without dominance? How do you prevent chaos? We don't prevent chaos. We channel it, I replied. Everyone here has a role they've chosen based on their skills and interests, not their designation. River chose healing. Storm chose protection. Ember and Finn chose logistics. We all contribute what we can, and we all support each other. I looked at her. What do you want to do, Jasmine? What makes you happy? She was quiet for a moment. I like working with plants. Growing things. My old pack said it was pointless for an Omega to waste time in gardens when we should be focused on domestic skills. Then you should talk to River about joining the garden project, I said. We're always looking for wolves who understand cultivation. Your skills would be valued here. Her eyes widened with hope. Really? I could just choose that. You can choose anything, I assured her. That's the whole point. Over the next hour, I guided Jasmine through the valley, introducing her to various wolves, showing her the different projects and roles available. By the time I left her with River, who was delighted to have another gardener, she was smiling for the first time since her arrival. This was my purpose now. Not just being Declan's mate, though I loved that role, but being a bridge for wolves who'd been broken by the old system. Helping them understand that freedom wasn't chaos, that choice wasn't selfishness, that they deserved to be valued for who they were, not what they could provide. As the sun reached its peak, I found myself back at the rock outcropping with Declan. We often came here during the day, stealing moments alone amid the chaos of running a rapidly growing pack. I have something to tell you, I said, my heart fluttering with nervous excitement. Declan turned to me, his golden eyes warm. What is it? I took his hand and placed it on my stomach. River confirmed it this morning. I'm pregnant. For a moment, Declan just stared at me. Then his face split into the widest smile I'd ever seen. Pregnant? You're weird. We're having a pup, I confirmed. Due in about 6 months. He pulled me into his arms, holding me like I was made of glass and gold and everything precious in the world. A pup. Our pup. Celeste, I can't even. I know. I laughed, tears streaming down my face. I'm terrified and excited and so happy. We're going to be parents, Declan said wonderingly. We're going to raise a pup in this valley, in this pack, where they'll know from their first breath that they're valued for who they are, that they have choices, that they're loved unconditionally. No matter what designation they are, I added. No matter if they're Alpha, Beta, or Omega. They'll be ours, and they'll be perfect. We stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, imagining the future. A future where our pup would grow up free. Where they'd learn that strength came in many forms. Where they'd be part of a pack that celebrated choice and diversity and love. A future we'd fought for. A future we'd earned. That evening, we announced the news to the pack. The celebration was immediate and overwhelming. Wolves howling their joy, River already planning herbal remedies for pregnancy, Natasha declaring she'd personally train our pup in combat regardless of designation, Storm announcing he'd make sure they knew how to defend themselves. Even Lucian, who'd stayed for dinner, offered his congratulations. The first pup born to the Wild Ones pack, he said, raising his glass. A symbol of everything you've built. Everything you've changed. As the celebration continued around us, I leaned into Declan's warmth and thought about the journey that had brought me here. A year ago, I'd been standing in a council chamber, fighting for our right to exist. 2 years ago, I'd been fleeing through the wilderness, expecting to die alone and forgotten. 3 years ago, I'd been locked in a tiny room, being sold to a stranger, believing I was worthless. But I'd run. I'd chosen freedom over security, chosen uncertainty over captivity, chosen myself when everyone said I had no right to do so. And that choice had led me here, to this valley, to this pack, to this man who taught me what love really meant, to a life where I woke up every day excited about the possibilities instead of dreading what would be demanded of me, to a future where my pup would never know what it felt like to be invisible, to be told they were broken, to believe they had no value beyond what they could provide to others. What are you thinking about? Declan murmured against my hair. Everything, I said honestly. The past, the present, the future. How far we've come. How much has changed. Any regrets? He asked. I looked around at the celebration, at River laughing with his apprentices, at Storm playfully wrestling with some of the younger wolves, at Ember and Finn dancing by the fire, at the 200 wolves who'd found sanctuary in our valley, at the life we'd built from nothing but hope and determination and the stubborn belief that we deserved better. Not a single one, I said firmly. All of this, was worth every moment of fear, every challenge, every struggle. We changed the world, Declan. Maybe not the whole world yet, but our corner of it. And we're just getting started. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. I love you, Celeste. My mate, my partner, my revolution. I love you too, I replied. My protector, my friend, my home. As the moon rose over the valley, painting everything in silver light, I felt a peace I'd never known was possible. This was what freedom felt like. This was what love looked like. This was what home meant. Not a place, but a choice. A choice to be yourself, to love who you wanted, to build the life you deserved instead of accepting the one others designed for you. And standing there with Declan's arms around me, our pup growing inside me, our pack celebrating around us, I knew with absolute certainty. I was exactly where I was meant to be. I was free. And I was never going back. The end. Thank you for joining Celeste on her journey from broken Omega to revolutionary leader. From invisible daughter to valued mate. From a wolf who believed she was worthless to a woman who changed pack law for every Omega in the territories. Her story proves that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself, even when the whole world tells you that you don't have the right. If Celeste's story touched you, if you've ever felt invisible or worthless or trapped, remember this. You have the right to choose. You have the right to be free. You have the right to build a life that honors who you are, not what others demand you be. May you find your pack. May you find your freedom. And may you never settle for anything less than the love and respect you deserve. Thank you for listening to Wolf Heart Tales. Until next time, may the moon light your path.